Oh my gosh, hello and welcome to the stream, guys. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, adventurers and legends. Welcome to another ELFSAR art stream where I do a deep dive on the subject that we're drawing. That's right, hello. We are doing Ghost in the Shell. I had a bunch of different anime properties I was gonna select from. And man, I had to pick Ghost in the Shell. It is the most cyberpunk of them all. If you're brand new to the channel, basically what I do, first off, if you're watching this later on YouTube, hit that, smash that like button. That really helps out the channel. But what I do is I draw something from start to finish. Then I give it away to a lucky viewer who is either in chat or is subscribed to the channel or supporting on Patreon. How do you enter? That's exactly what I just said. Be here in chat. Be an active viewer and get rewarded for the free entry. However, you can hack the system in your favor by becoming a subscriber on either DLive, Kick, or Twitch. You can even be a legendary hacker by supporting the stream on Patreon. But anyway, the links are all down in my about section. That is it.
I'll be back.
I'm excited about it. I'm excited about the Terminator art stream. It's going to be an epic one. I guarantee you. Warwick, thank you for that lovely host. I appreciate that, man. Thank you so much. All right. So are you guys ready? Are you guys ready to begin?
Ghost in the Shell is one of my all-time favourite films. Oshii's 1995 classic was a huge stepping stone for not only anime, but sci-fi in general. My love for the Ghost in the Shell franchise stretches way back
if it's
before
too
I
loud.
even knew what anime was. I originally watched the TV series, and although that impressed me, it was the 1995 film that really blew me away. What really impressed me about the movie was how much detail they squeezed into only 83 minutes. This inspired me to do an analysis of the film instead of a review. I wanted to look deeper into the movie and see just how brilliant it really is. In this video I'm going to be analysing one of the movie's most prominent themes, the differences between human and cyborg, or the ghost in the shell. More specifically, how Motoko Kusanagi deals with it. Throughout the movie, Oshii adds a number of subtle and obvious hints towards what Kusanagi feels, and how her feelings develop and mature throughout the story. And towards the end it gets extremely interesting, so stick around. The title, Ghost in the Shell, is the most blatant metaphor in the film. The ghost refers to your mental existence, and the shell referring to your physical existence. The movie follows Motoko as she ponders if she has a soul or a ghost, despite being almost fully cyborg. The title perfectly sums up the film. It doesn't confirm whether there is a ghost in the shell or whether there isn't. It's just a suggestion that there might be. The movie opens up with some very impressive animation and some very important details. We see Motoko sitting on a roof with various robotic voices speaking. These voices may just sound like people talking over a radio, but the voices become more significant as the movie progresses and we learn more about the voice of Motoko's ghost. The piece of dialogue, "It's my time of the month," has a similar effect. At first it just seems like a humorous remark. It actually gives us our first taste of Motoko's dilemma. The opening titles of this movie have to be among the most iconic in not only anime history but in film history. The green and black text was famously one of the big influences for The Matrix. Much like the title itself, the opening really sums up the film both metaphorically and literally. During the title sequence we watch as a cyborg model is produced. The model being produced is the same as our main character uses. We're not completely sure if this is the exact one she uses. This becomes more important later in the film. I personally believe it is the one she uses, as it cuts to a close-up shot of her immediately after the titles end. The titles start with the iconic Ghost in the Shell title, followed by a shot of a cyber brain being placed into the body. This is quite significant as the brain is held responsible for our ghosts. People can replace their cyber bodies, but the cyber brain is much more valuable. What's interesting is that in the next shot, we see a scan of a real human brain. We saw that in the last shot, the cyber brain doesn't look like a normal human brain. This is very important. It tells the viewer that there is a natural human element added to the cyborgs. They aren't just completely robotic. We then see the head closing in, securing the brain in place. After this we get a full body shot of the cyborg body. Notice that it resembles human muscle. Another natural element included. It's important that the cyborg body looks like a human body. This tells us that people would rather be recognised as humans than cyborgs. Though as the viewer we still feel it's a cyborg body as it hangs lifeless from a number of cables. The next few shots are extremely important as they're brought up later on in the diving scene. The cyborg body is pushed through a water tube and rises to the top of the water. As she slowly rises above the surface we get another scan similar to the brain scan. She rises from the liquid. As she does so, the liquid starts to behave in a weird way, showing the viewer the importance of the shot. It looks quite magical. She now starts to look even more human-like. As she rises from a second, more natural liquid, her skin starts to break away from her body. This is symbolic as it looks like she's breaking away from an egg or cocoon. As it starts to break away, we see an even more human-like character. The birth symbolism is furthered by the next shot of her lying in the fetal position, the same position a baby would be in the womb. She then drops down into more water. This is a metaphor for the actual act of giving birth, or a woman's water breaking. She finally rises from the water chamber as the birth of a cyborg is complete. We have a long shot looking at the cyborg's face, slowly zooming in, then a cut straight to Motoko sleeping in her bed. She opens her eyes as to tell the viewer that she's finally born. She stares into the camera, and then at her hand, hinting that what we just witnessed was a dream or memory of Motoko's. This shows the viewer that she's still very quizzical body, and a great setup for the questions asked throughout the movie. She wakes up in a completely black room. She opens the window and stares out into the grey, cyborg-looking city. As it cuts to a shot a little further away from Motoko, we're shown nothing in her room. Even she is just a silhouette. This shows that despite the birth scene that was full of life, there's no personality or emotion in her life. She lives in a room with a plain bed, no colour and a big window. This is a great way of telling us that despite wanting to find her human side, she still lacks emotion. What we see out of her window is very reminiscent of the production line she was born in. It's almost like it's telling us that she's still just a production. As she gets out of bed, she doesn't turn on a light, listen to any news or any music, again showing us that she lacks human emotions. She gets her jacket and leaves the apartment. As she leaves, she shuts the blinds, leaving complete darkness. This is a good way of showing us that a room is merely a container for sleep, not a personal space. These first scenes are brilliant in showing us a contrast of feelings. We really need to think hard about what Motoko feels and what she wants. The next scene I would like to look at is the scene with Togusa and Motoko. They're in a van as they prepare for a mission and have a conversation about the Puppet Master. While talking about various factors of the mission, Motoko says this quote,
本拠ですってそうささやくのよ私のゴースト
This is one of the first times Motoko literally addresses the ghost concept. What she's referring to is her gut feeling. She's very similar to the Puppet Master and is taking a natural guess at the situation. What's interesting about this part is the way she portrays it. She says it as if the whisper came from a third-party source, as if her ghost is a separate entity than herself, or her shell. This line of dialogue, despite being quite obvious, is very interpretive. I personally think this shows uncertainty about her situation. She's still unsure what she is, so she plays around jokingly with the concept. It could also be interpreted as Motoko not thinking she's an individual at all, just a puppet. Her ghost is a completely separate thing that makes all the decisions for her. This would be a rational, but non-human-like belief. The next piece of dialogue they have is a conversation about the differences between Togusa and Motoko. Motoko explains that Togusa is important due to him being very human. He has a lot to lose, everything from his family to his non-cyborg body. They use his revolver as a metaphor. It's impractical and there are better and more efficient guns out there, but Togusa prefers the revolver due to its more natural qualities. This is like Togusa himself. You can think of Togusa as a revolver and Motoko as an automatic pistol. Motoko then goes on to outline the faults with a perfect system. They lack the natural and human qualities. This is yet another great scene from the undecided Motoko. The interview scene is one of the more sadder scenes in the film. Togusa explains to the man that his whole life is a made-up lie. His memories were implanted into his brain by criminals so he could help them with their crimes. The man has to come to the realization that everything he knows and loves are lies. He's then told it won't be possible to bring back his real memories. The camera then pans out to Bato and Motoko watching the interview through glass. The shot we see this conversation in is very symbolic. Motoko is looking through the glass, but from our angle, she's looking at a reflection of herself. This is a great way of showing us that Motoko is really pondering what she is now. Clearly the interview has had a great effect on her. The reflection is a great way of showing her two entities, and one of many uses of reflections in the movie. One of the reflections is slightly faded. Maybe this is telling us she's getting closer about making a decision about her existence, or it could be a reference to one of the quotes in the diving scene. The puppet master also mentions a similar concept later on in the movie. Bato then goes on to say a Descartes-inspired piece of dialogue.
疑似体験も夢も存在する情報は全て現実であり、そして幻なんだ。
He brings up that even artificial memories and thoughts exist as information, so they can be perceived as reality. This is important as Motoko has always thought about her memories and thoughts as mere meaningless artificial calculations. But Bato believes that anything can be perceived as reality, making Motoko's thoughts just as real as a normal human's. This is from René Descartes' famous cogito ergo sum, or I think therefore I am. Here he believes that nothing can truly be absolute reality, as reality is only how you perceive it. Regardless of how real your thoughts and memories feel, humans can be easily tricked and memories can be easily manipulated. Motoko thinks therefore she is. She now has a possible justification for her existence, despite not being fully human. The scene now fades into one of my favourite scenes from the film, the diving scene. I think this is one of the strongest scenes in the movie. It's full of great dialogue and very smart metaphors, but also refers back to the birth scene at the start of the movie. We start off with various shots of Motoko floating through the depths of the water, very much like how she was at the start of the movie. We then have another reflection shot. This time the colours are more contrasting and it feels like there's more of a divide between the two Motokos. As she submerges above the water, she lies there for a few seconds staring into the sky. She gets back onto the boat and we have another brilliant piece of dialogue between Bato and Motoko. As they have some joking dialogue, Motoko begins to get undressed in the sights of Bato. This isn't because she wants to provoke any sexual tension, but because she doesn't understand that there would be any sexual tension. This is a reminder that she still doesn't fully understand how humans behave. The scene skips a few hours in time and they have more dialogue.
なあ、海へ潜るってどんな感じ？
Motoko explains why she likes diving into the ocean in a brilliant symbolic way.
恐れ、不安、孤独、病、それからもしかしたら希望。
She mentions the emotions she gets when she dives. They're not extremely positive emotions, but they are strong emotions. Emotions that she probably doesn't feel normally due to her being built as a war machine. The diving reminds her of her birth, when she was more vulnerable. Maybe she wishes she could have those human emotions like everyone else.
海面へ浮かび上がるとき、今までとは違う自分になれるんじゃないか。
She feels like she becomes someone else when she emerges from the water. This is a clear reference to her emerging from the water at the start of the film. Maybe she feels that if she does this, she'll be more human. Another hint towards what she wants, but we're reminded that she isn't completely a human after all, when she attributes it all to decompression.
そんな気がするときがあるの。
Motoko then goes on to explain that because their bodies are cyborg, they pretty much belong to Section 9. She explains chillingly everything that makes a human human.
他人を隔てるための顔、それと意識しない声、目覚めの時に見つめれて、幼かった頃の記憶、未来の予感。
In this list she includes things that normal humans wouldn't have, but she does.
私の電脳がアクセスできる膨大な情報やネットの広がり、それら全てが私の一部であり、私という意識そのものを生み出し。
She says that due to this, she feels alive.
そして同時に、私をある限界に制約し続ける。
But also feels like she has strict boundaries to what she can do due to her body. Bato, who champions the philosophy of everyone is just as alive as everyone else, gets annoyed by this. But he's interrupted by something that says, Neither Bato or Motoko say this out loud. When asked if this was her, Motoko cautiously looks around and then turns to stare at the camera, as to ask you, the viewer, the question. So who did say this? Was it Motoko's ghost, or was it Motoko herself? It could be Motoko herself subconsciously saying it without realising. If this is true, what does this tell us? Well, the quote says now it's like we're looking through a mirror, just like the reflection scenes, but it says that we see a dim image, telling us that Motoko's belief of her being separate from her ghost is fading. Is she starting to feel like one entity? Or is she starting to feel like finding a conclusion is growing more distant? Does she feel that the more she thinks about it, the more she furthers herself from herself? It's a great quote with a lot of meaning and room for interpretation. We then get some dramatic plot development as the cyborg's found hit by a truck on the highway. We cut to the Section 9 HQ. Motoko stares into the eyes of the cyborg body. As Motoko is told what's going on, Bato explains that the cyborg is completely non-human, but has a ghost. This is obviously a massive development. The viewer and Motoko were under the impression a ghost is the creation of humans only and cannot be manufactured. When discussing this suspicious situation, Bato announces his belief in it being possible. Motoko remains quite quiet during the conversation and seems to be thinking hard about it. She then states that she herself must be the one to find out what's inside of the cyborg body. She sees herself in the cyborg body and wants to learn more about herself through the cyborg. Motoko and Bato have a conversation in the elevator. Motoko asks Bato if the cyborg reminds him of her.
あの擬態、私に似てなかった。
似てねえよ。
顔や骨格だけじゃなくて。
She then wonders if she actually died a long time ago, or if she ever existed at all.
私みたいな完全に擬態化したサイボーグなら誰でも考えるわ。 もしかしたら自分はとっくの昔に死んじゃって。
In this scene, Motoko starts to feel less human. Clearly the newly found cyborg has affected her quite a bit.
今の自分は電脳と擬態で構成された模擬人格なんじゃないか。いや、そもそも初めから私なんてものは存在しなかったんじゃないかって。
There's a lot to talk about in this scene. Motoko and Bato bring up multiple views and philosophies. Motoko starts to doubt her own existence. She feels that there's a possibility her mind and personality are just artificial creations from her cyber brain. Bato then argues that she's treated like a human, making her human despite her almost fully cyborg body.
お前のチタンの頭蓋骨の中には脳みそもあるし、ちゃんと人間扱いだってされてるじゃねえか。
Bato maintains his philosophy of I think therefore I am. Motoko then responds by making a comment about her brain. Obviously she's referring to how non-human it looks. Even the fact that there are natural pieces of her human brain inside the cyber brain, she feels it doesn't matter. She states that the only thing that makes her feel human is the way she's treated. Bato asks if she's doubting her own ghost. Motoko doesn't answer the question directly, but with another question, telling us she's doubting herself.
もし電脳それ自体がゴーストを生み出し魂を宿すとしたら、その時は何を根拠に自分を信じるべきだと思う。
She then talks about cyber brains creating their own ghosts, which is a completely different philosophical topic, maybe for another video. The thought of cyborgs being able to create their own souls is a very tricky one for Motoko. It would mean she probably isn't human, or the human she thinks she is. But she would at least be something. She would at least have some sort of answer to her dilemma, instead of being stuck in a human-cyborg limbo. But again, would she feel as if the cyborg soul was herself, or a separate entity? Would she feel like this was truly her, or just an imitation? She confirms this in what she says next. She asks, what can you base your beliefs in yourself on, if you don't even know who created you? There's a very long pause as they both think about it. Then Bato expresses his opinion.
Nice.
Again, he states that he's against the separation of cyborg souls and human souls, at least in Motoko's case. We're then confirmed to the fact that the independent cyborg found is indeed the Puppet Master. As we find this out, we get a lot of dialogue from the Puppet Master himself, as he raises even more philosophical questions about artificial intelligence. Since we're only focusing on Motoko's philosophies in this specific video, I won't analyse this dialogue too much, but it definitely warrants a discussion on another video. Though the dialogue is very relevant to Motoko, as he discusses artificial intelligence being no different from human intelligence. He believes that there isn't much difference between life created in information and life created through chemicals like humans. A very valid point, and one that is relevant to Motoko's dilemma. Keep in mind that this movie was made in 1995. The dialogue here is more accurate than most modern sci-fi movies. Quite an impressive prediction. On asked to prove his existence, the Puppet Master responds by saying that is impossible, as no one can explain what life really is. What is existence? What makes our existence more real than that of a computer's? All great points that further develop the philosophies relating to Motoko.
All I ever needed is here in my arms. In my arms.
Yeah, we're jumping in the deep end, right?
Hey Wisecrack, Jared here, and today we're taking a fresh look at the 1995 classic that seamlessly combined mind-bending metaphysical themes and cartoon boobs, Ghost in the Shell. Yeah, we know there's a new version out, but apparently they forgot to put in a lot of the brainy stuff, so we decided to talk about the original. Many have weighed in over the years on what the film says about the line between human and machine, but that's not what we're talking about today. Instead, we're going to examine the film's warning about humanity's potentially fatal flaw and its roadmap for a more evolved civilization. Ghost in the Shell is probably one of the most philosophically complex animated films out there. Welcome to this Wisecrack edition on the philosophy of Ghost in the Shell, and as always, spoilers ahead. Ghost in the Shell had a huge impact on sci-fi. Works such as Ex Machina, The Matrix, and Westworld echo not only the film's aesthetics, but also the theme of mankind versus technology. We often see this as a warning that technology will take over and or alter humanity for the worse. And I'm not talking about clickbait or selfies. I'm talking about this.
The machines had found all the energy they would ever need.
And this. You know, classic robot overlord stuff. However, Ghost in the Shell is different. While it's set up to be a typical battle between man and his creation, the resolution is not one side triumphing over the other, but a synthesis between the two. Don't remember? Can't blame you, it's probably been a while, but here's a quick refresher. The film centers around Major Motoko Kusanagi, a cyborg government agent working for Section 9, basically a black ops unit. Section 9 pursues a mysterious entity known as the Puppet Master, who employs ghost hacking to monkey around with people's memories and force them to do its bidding.
Do you even know who you are?
Ghost-hacked humans are so pathetic, it's a shame. And this poor bastard's been hacked pretty badly.
This super hacker turns out to be a spy program originally called Project 2501, which was secretly developed by Section 6. They're an intelligence division sort of like the CIA. Section 6 lost control of their creation after it spontaneously developed self-awareness by swimming in the vast ocean of the digital world. When Kusanagi finally catches up to the Puppet Master, it makes a rather forward proposal.
I want us to merge.
Merge?
That they should merge consciousnesses and create a new, unique being. She accepts, and the film ends with a new entity, call it the Kusanuppet Master, contemplating what to do next. Maybe a vacation? The confrontation and resolution of these two forces, human and digital consciousnesses, reflects German philosopher Georg Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel's vision of progress. Yeah, what a name. To Hegel, conflict progresses human history. Every development from the time of our illustrious forefathers to the present day is caused by forces that clash and create something new. This is Hegel's dialectics in a nutshell. But before we get into that, we need to show how Hegel's fundamental ideas help build the setting of Ghost in the Shell. First and foremost, Hegel's philosophy is driven by the belief that the world operates on rational principles and that the true nature of reality is knowable. Kusanagi is defined by this philosophical idealism. She is driven by dissatisfaction with her limited perspective.
Any way you look at it, all the information that a person accumulates in a lifetime is just a drop in the bucket.
And is convinced that there is a more perfect reality available to her. As such, the film treats the marriage of Kusanagi's human consciousness and the Puppet Master's artificial nature with a certain optimism, and Hegel's system of dialectics explains why. But first, I want to distinguish Hegel's dialectics from the way the term is more commonly understood. In classical philosophy, dialectics are a form of argumentative discourse designed to ferret out contradictions and arrive at a better understanding of truth. You start with an argument called a thesis, which is met by a counter-argument called an antithesis. The end result may be either a refutation of the original idea, an affirmation of the counter-argument, or a synthesis of the assertions that results in a better understanding of the subject. Think Socratic method or a lawyer cross-examining a witness. The purpose is to learn the truth. In Hegel's system, dialectics is more than just philosophical inquiry. They are the very mechanism by which humans progress, both on an individual level and as a collective. When one force confronts another force, something new ultimately emerges. At the heart of the film is a dialectic of the human and digital worlds. In the one corner, we have Kusanagi and her human mind. Her various memories and experiences combine to make her a unique individual, and yet she feels constrained by her own limited personal identity.
Each of those things are just a small part of it. I collect information to use in my own way. All of that blends to create a mixture that forms me and gives rise to my conscience. I feel confined, only free to expand myself within boundaries.
In the other corner, we have the Puppet Master, who sprang forth from the vast informational resources of cyber reality and therefore possesses the broader understanding that Kusanagi seeks. But the Puppet Master too feels limited by its lack of personal identity.
I refer to myself as an intelligent life form because I am sentient and am able to recognize my own existence. But in my present state, I am still incomplete. I lack the most basic life processes inherent in all living organisms, reproducing and dying.
In short, each has what the other needs. Other films have us trained to think that when technology gets a little too big for its britches, it needs to be put in its place so humanity can be preserved. But through the lens of Hegel's master-slave dialectic, this meeting of the minds should have no winner. Imagine a feudal lord of the Middle Ages and the serfs bound to work his fields. The lord is the master. He can force the serfs to toil away because he controls all the agriculture in the area. The serfs are his slaves, peasants who can't afford land of their own. They work their asses off, while the lord sits back with a refreshing drink. Sounds great for the lord, right? Well, the problem is, as the serfs labor, they become better at farming, while the master learns nothing new. He stagnates, while the serfs become more powerful due to their valuable knowledge. This, according to Hegel, is what leads the oppressed to overcome their masters. Examples of oppressive masters and usurping slaves resonate throughout Ghost in the Shell.
So what's the latest on your puppet master?
He's only a puppet himself.
Section 6, ostensibly pulling the puppet master's strings, remains antiquated, stagnant, and stuck in the politics of the old world.
I'm submitting a formal complaint about this through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
They preserve some power through their mastery of Project 2501, but gain nothing while the puppet master slowly gains sentience as it labors for them. Separately, the puppet master acts as a master when it uses its ghost hacking ability to hijack others and force them to do its bidding. We see this early in the film when Section 9 interrogates the garbage man and learns that he was brainwashed into believing that he was spying on his wife, when in fact, he was merely the puppet master's tool.
What's a simulated experience again?
But the puppet master's efforts are constantly thwarted, and it remains unable to escape the terms of its bondage. Similarly, Section 9's typical MO is classic master behavior. They use lethal force to accomplish their goals, leaving no room for compromise. The first time we see Batu, he's bragging that Section 9 has the authority to kill.
We're the ones who get our hands dirty.
And Aramaki's approach to the puppet master is to destroy it if Kusanagi can't secure it.
If you're unable to retrieve the puppet master, your orders are to destroy it, without fail.
Ultimately, none of this is productive. It just makes it harder for Section 9 to understand the puppet master's true nature and prolongs Kusanagi's journey to enlightenment. The preferred result when two opposing forces clash is synthesis, which Hegel refers to as sublation. He means something very specific here. It's combination without loss. The result is a unique, superior idea that incorporates and accommodates both perspectives. That's what the puppet master is proposing when he suggests that he and Kusanagi merge.
We will both undergo change, but there is nothing for either of us to lose.
A cyborg is a great example of this. A cyborg is neither wholly man or machine. It's a synthesis of man and machine. Encompassing both, it becomes something new. Sublation is crucial because it helps avoid the stagnation that occurs when a person, idea, or whatever becomes too insulated. Looking at Section 9, we see that the team was composed with dialectical principles in mind. When Togusa asks Kusanagi why he, a non-augmented human, is included on the team of cyborg badasses, Kusanagi explains that his uniqueness makes the group stronger.
If we all reacted the same way, we'd be predictable, and there's always more than one way to view a situation. What's true for the group is also true for the individual. It's simple. Over-specialize and you breed in weakness. It's slow death.
The puppet master too is aware of the problem of stagnation, and that's why he needs the constraints that Kusanagi feels fettered by.
Life perpetuates itself through diversity, and this includes the ability to sacrifice itself when necessary. Cells repeat the process of degeneration and regeneration until one day they die, obliterating an entire set of memory and information. Only genes remain. Why continually repeat this cycle? Simply to survive by avoiding the weaknesses of an unchanging system.
This is reminiscent of a species from another classic series, the Borg from Star Trek. The Borg are an awesome villain, and I'd use pretty much any excuse to bring them up, but they actually illustrate what we're talking about pretty well. The Borg is a cybernetic race that travels the galaxy, assimilating other species into a collective mind. Why do they do this?
We wish to improve ourselves. We will add your biological and technological distinctiveness to our own. Your culture will adapt to service ours.
It's the same reason. Without diversity, the weaknesses of the race will inbreed and compound, rendering their civilization vulnerable. Obviously, from the perspective of the assimilated, there's some loss. The Borg gets your smarts and fresh genetic material, and all you get is a new, modern look. But from the perspective of the Borg, it's a story of developing consciousness.
Captain, they've adapted.
Sublation is the climax of Ghost in the Shell. Not a battle to the death, but rather a synthesis that results in a stronger, more evolved being.
Because I am now neither the woman who was known as the Major, nor am I the program called the Puppet Master.
For Hegel, the progress of human history happens through conflicts like these, both on an individual level and on a much larger scale. Every time we make any kind of advance through these dialectics, be it in science, art, or what have you, the world enters a new state of affairs that should represent an improvement over what came before. Hegel calls this new state Geist. The word can be translated as mind, spirit, or even, and wait for it, ghost. So, Geist in the Shell, anyone? At the end of the film, after Kusanagi and the Puppet Master have merged, we have a new state of affairs in which this type of being exists. Call it a new era, call it evolution, call it what you will. It's Geist following its trajectory toward an improved world. The film hints at this in the climactic battle scene, when tank fire obliterates the names of less evolved creatures in the Tree of Life, stopping at the top on hominids. This symbolizes that evolution must continue, even past human beings. This is why Ghost in the Shell's message is so unique from other films in the genre. It's not about what will happen if we do merge with our technology, it's what will happen if we don't. The message is to interact with the world, resolve our contradictions with it, and emerge stronger than we were before. Clinging to our beliefs about what we are will only prevent us from becoming what we can be.
I want to guarantee that I can still be myself.
There isn't one. Why would you wish to? All things change in a dynamic environment. Your effort to remain what you are is what limits you.
Put another way, resistance is futile may sound bad coming from the Borg, but according to Hegel, sublation is a necessary step towards progress. So it just may be true. Stay cool, Wisecrack. Right? Peace.
Masamune Shirow's Ghost in the Shell is among the largest and most influential anime and manga franchises of the past 25 years. In this video, I will analyze, compare, and detail each part of this franchise chronologically in as great a depth as I can manage. The Ghost in the Shell franchise can be confusing to navigate for newcomers, as each iteration is its own separate entity, even though they all share a number of commonalities. While the film series, the TV series, the OVA series, and each of the spin-offs related to these can all be called adaptations of the original manga, each of them offers a different take on the source material, to the point that they all stand alone as their own works within the Ghost in the Shell complex. In the afterword of the original manga's most recent publication, Masamune Shirow himself declares that there is no one definitive version of Ghost in the Shell, and that each version should be thought of individually. Manga artist Masamune Shirow started his career in the early 80s, drawing self-published cyberpunk series Black Magic. His first major published work was Appleseed in 1985, followed by Dominion Tank Police in 86, and Ghost in the Shell in 89. By the time Ghost in the Shell began publication, all of Shirow's other works had received anime OVA adaptations, so it's probably safe to say that he was fairly popular by the time of Ghost in the Shell's release. Featuring striking character art, gorgeously detailed cyberpunk backgrounds, and no shortage of full-color illustrations, Shirow's manga is a feast for the eyes. I would say as well that his sense of panel layouts and pacing improves dramatically over the course of the series. A lot of the action scenes in the early chapters are difficult to follow, and the pacing of panels is totally uneven, but after the rough early chapters, the book evens out significantly, though not completely. Ghost in the Shell tells the story of Section 9, an anti-terrorist group with a sort of anomalous place in the country's self-defense forces, technically being similar to the police, but existing outside of their ranks. Led by the noble chief Aramaki, the group consists of possibly the most powerful cyborg in existence, Major Motoko Kusanagi, the also highly powerful cyborg Bato, the completely normal but nonetheless cool former cop Togusa, the information and net surfing guru Ishikawa, Furukawa, the one-eyed badass sniper Saito, and the two guys who almost never get any screen time in any iteration of the franchise, Paz and Borma. There are a few other minor characters who show up in the later chapters of the manga and TV series, but overall the main 7 members of Section 9 and their capabilities are the one thing that remains totally consistent across all iterations of Ghost in the Shell. On a surface level, Ghost in the Shell can be described as a procedural police drama, with episodic plotlines that often involve heavily political investigations of various cyber crimes and terrorist acts in a 50 years from now Japan. However, I wouldn't consider the actual episodic plotlines to be the real focus or draw of the series, and I'd go so far as to say that Masamune Shiro never really took these stories very seriously. That's not to say that the stories are unintelligent, in fact the opposite is usually true, but rather I think that Shiro has always been far less interested in storytelling as opposed to simply presenting ideas. He never organizes his stories in a way that maximizes drama or character development, but rather is more worried about cramming as many world-building tidbits into each story as he can possibly manage. A lot of the time he seems to deliberately undercut any sense of dramatic tension or moralizing from the story in the interest of keeping it as dryly expository as possible. Shiro's characters act pretty goofy a lot of the time, and rarely seem even slightly invested in their work. They're always complaining, arguing, and acting careless, which in combination with the frantic art and pacing of the early chapters creates a feeling of chaos a lot of the time. It takes getting through these chapters to sort of acclimate yourself to Shiro's intentions with the story, and even when the chapters become a lot more readable as the volume goes on, it also becomes increasingly obvious in certain cases that Shiro is way more interested in presenting cool ideas than he is in telling a story. Ghost in the Shell takes a rare approach to explaining its futuristic concepts. Whereas many sci-fi series try and shrug off a lot of the technical details to focus on the dramatic implications of the technology they dream up, Ghost in the Shell goes into ridiculous amounts of detail about everything, with entire chapters dedicated to things like how prosthetic bodies are made, how Uchikoma AI works, how robots can parallel human evolution, and minute details of every piece of tech that is ever shown. Towards the end of the volume, there are parts where the Major and the Puppet Master get into technobabble dialogue that went right over my head for pages on end. In any other story, I'd question the realism of all these conversations, but if there's one thing I can say for certain, it's that Masamune Shiro has done far more research into technology, politics, military and police procedures, and psychology than I have. Shiro's liner notes have a persistent presence throughout the manga, with a wide variety of purposes. Sometimes he's explaining how tech works, sometimes he's making offhand remarks about technology and politics, and sometimes he's even correcting his own work, saying things like, ordinarily these planes would fly farther apart, but I drew them closer together for the sake of this illustration. It's possibly the most obsessive-compulsive graphic novel structure I've ever seen. There are even parts where the liner notes take the place of entire manga panels. If this doesn't make Shiro's intentions as a writer clear, then I don't know what does. Despite, or perhaps because of, its weird structure, Ghost in the Shell remains a compelling read, strictly because so many of Shiro's ideas are really fascinating to behold. Shiro seems to have captured one of the most believable post-singularity futures that I've ever seen, and while some of the dates of events in the volume's prescript can now be disproven, the manga has mostly aged incredibly well, with the majority of its concepts remaining plausible. Moreover, it's clear that Shiro's own image of this world expands over the course of the series. Early on, the manga focuses mostly on cyborgization, with the most prominent concepts being the existence of a cyber brain, which allows for new levels of communication as well as new levels of hacking and memory tampering. He expands on existing psychological concepts of how the brain and memories work, and explores how these concepts would be affected by the melding of human bodies with machinery. Shiro does so many interesting things with these core ideas that I can't possibly detail much of it here, which is exactly why I have to give this manga a recommendation for anyone with an interest in psychology, technology, and/or futurism. By the end of the first volume, Shiro starts to play around with the idea of how cyber beings would interact with the open internet, though perhaps as a result of the internet being a pretty new concept at the time, he doesn't go too in depth with it. The end of this volume is the point where Ghost in the Shell kind of breaks into two different continuities. In the years following the completion of the first volume, Shiro wrote 4 more chapters about the exploits of Section 9 after the departure of Major Kusanagi at the end of Volume 1, which were later published in a collected volume called Ghost in the Shell 1.5. At the same time, he also began work on Ghost in the Shell 2 in 1991, an indirect sequel following just the Major in her high-tech exploits, taking place 4 years after the original story. Ghost in the Shell 2's artwork is interesting in that it makes heavy usage of computer graphics mixed with hand-drawn digital art. The combination works surprisingly well, and Shiro seems to understand how to combine these things just right, with a significant amount of the volume also being in color for the parts that are digitally drawn. That said, I have to admit that I kind of gave up on reading this volume after after a couple of chapters, partly because I was burned out from consuming every other part of this franchise in the past week, but also because this manga takes the technical jargon and lack of a proper structure to a whole new level. Shiro seems to have fully embraced his desire to just explore technical constructs, and with him having the Major elevated to a whole new stage of net supremacy, he can have her do all kinds of impressively complicated things. Ghost in the Shell 2 feels like something you would need the brain of a programmer to appreciate, and I sadly lack such a brain. The Ghost in the Shell manga seems to have been pretty successful in its original Japanese run, but it wasn't until 1995 that the franchise would take off into worldwide acclaim with the release of Mamoru Oshii's film adaptation. Having been released in the UK and the US very soon after its Japanese debut, Ghost in the Shell was a massive hit, and is often credited with bringing in a wave of new anime fans in the mid-90s, and contributing massively to the Western anime boom which occurred in the following years. It was famously listed as one of the biggest influences on hit Hollywood film series The Matrix, and along with the likes of Neon Genesis Evangelion, likely raised the bar for philosophical intelligent writing in anime, while spawning no shortage of imitators. While the Ghost in the Shell movie is an adaptation of several chapters of the original manga, and about 90% of the dialogue is taken straight from the source material, the tone is so completely different that it's hardly comparable. Doing away with the late 80s design sensibilities in favor of a slick, realistic look, the film, animated by Production IG, is among the most visually impressive animated works ever made, and drips from head to toe with style. Its soundtrack by Kenji Kawai is filled with grave circumstance, resembling some kind of ritualistic temple chant a lot of the time, and creating an eerie, horror-esque vibe. In complete contrast to the manga, the film is very stark with dialogue, and features long scenes of just music and scenery footage. Instead of loading the viewer with technical jargon, the film focuses almost exclusively on the existential implications of the fusion of technology and the mind. Whereas Bato and the Major were silly, wisecracking characters in the manga, now they are always gravely serious. I actually counted the number of times a character smiled in the film, and there were maybe 4 in total. Paz, Borma, and Saito are never shown in the film, though their names are mentioned, and the AI-driven Uchikoma robots from the manga never make any appearance. Ghost in the Shell is an excellent film, and taken on its own, the existential concepts that it presents are quite interesting, though the manga and TV series go so much farther with these ideas that the film almost seems irrelevant in comparison. More than anything, I would recommend this film as an access point to the rest of the franchise, as it does a good job of showing you what the core ideas of the series are and what makes them interesting, and gives you a good mindset to approach the far more dense manga and TV series. Also, since I realized that a lot of my viewership is quite young, I should mention that this film contains a lot of graphic violence and nudity, and is not conventionally exciting in any way, so I don't know if I'd recommend it to younger audiences at all. In 1997, a Ghost in the Shell video game was developed by Exact for the PlayStation, in which players take control of an Uchikoma tank. This arcade-style third-person shooter is made surprisingly awesome by the fact that the Uchikoma can walk on literally any surface, as well as move very quickly in all directions. Thanks to its focus on simple objects, the 3D graphics have aged really well, and the fast controls remain a blast to play with. Plus, the game features fully animated cutscenes by Production IG, which are more faithful to the manga than they are to the studio's 1995 film. For an in-depth analysis of this and the other games in the Ghost in the Shell franchise, I highly recommend checking out the Hardcore Gaming 101 article, which I'll be linking in the description. The PS1 game is still readily findable on Amazon and can easily be emulated, though I ran into trouble when I tried to play through the night vision segments on an emulator. I'd leave it up to you to determine if the game is worth what you'll find yourself paying for it. With Shiro's manga finally ending its run in 1997, the Ghost in the Shell franchise went dormant for a while before re-emerging in 2002 with the beginning of the sub-franchise Ghost in the Shell Standalone Complex. Originally a 26-episode anime series by Production IG, it later spawned a second season, a theatrical film, 2 compilation movies, countless specials, a manga adaptation, 3 novelizations, and its own PlayStation 2 and PSP games, which I haven't played, so once again I defer to the Hardcore Gaming 101 article for info. Masamune Shiro may not believe that there is a definitive version of Ghost in the Shell, but if you ask me, Standalone Complex is easily the most fully realized vision of what the franchise has to offer. Through its combination of episodic stories and overarching plot lines, the series gets to explore its vast world through many different avenues, and unlike the original manga, it's far more interested in providing a gripping narrative and memorable characterization without skimping on the detailed world building. I would compare Standalone Complex to the likes of Mass Effect in how it manages to present a fleshed out, well-realized and believable world while exploring such a wide spectrum of themes and still delivering gut-punching overarching plot lines. On a production level, it's difficult for me to articulate how this series is so far beyond almost any any other TV anime. This show is written and directed with an expertise that I would expect from a high-budget HBO drama, and is animated with a sense of pacing that you will simply never get from an anime series that is directly adapted from manga. The number one place where this shows is in the action scenes, which particularly in the first season are among the best that I've ever witnessed. There are plenty of anime released these days which feature exciting kinetic fight scenes that are well drawn and choreographed. However, I would argue that most of them aren't particularly memorable. Fight scenes in anime tend to occur as a break from the drama and tension of the episode. Characters will have a dramatic dialogue together, and then there will be a fight scene before the dialogue continues, with the fight itself largely being inconsequential. What matters is only who won and who lost, and the content of the actual fight is just fluff for the viewers to enjoy. Mind you, I'm not saying these kind of fights are bad, and I do enjoy a lot of them. Funnily enough, a series that falls into this mold completely is the currently running OVA series Ghost in the Shell Arise, which features over-the-top combat scenes that are fun to watch but ultimately don't matter. Standalone Complex, meanwhile, doesn't focus so much on the intensity or choreography of its animated combat, but instead focuses on tension, pacing, and dispersal. Before any bullets are fired or knives swung, there's usually a lot of shots of characters moving into position and taking aim, allowing the viewer to get a good scope of where the fight is taking place, what's at stake, who is in control, and what each move could mean for the characters. The most perfect example of this is in the first episode, wherein, after showing various shots of where the Section 9 operatives are headed and how they infiltrate the building, there's a huge buildup of tension right before the operatives score consecutive headshots on all of their targets. The action occurs in only a few seconds, but is intensely satisfying due to the building of tension as well as the incredible visual and sound design. Throughout the first season of the series, I kept being bewildered at how it would create locations and scenes that you would never get in TV anime because they're too complicated to make. Even little things like showing a lot of the characters driving to and from places is the stuff that takes real effort to direct and animate, and that just doesn't happen even in the highest tier action shows. The series may not have the most sleek and memorable designs, favoring a down-to-earth realistic aesthetic, but I would easily consider it one of, if not the most impressive TV anime production that has ever been made. And while I'm at it, let's talk about the sound design. Most of the sound effects in the series are realistic and highly satisfying. The soundtrack is composed by Yoko Kanno, so it pretty much goes without saying that it's a tour de force of multi-genre awesomeness. Whereas Kenji Kawai's score for the film gave it a grave, almost frightening tone, Kanno's soundtrack is exciting, kinetic, and fun, giving the series a spy movie feeling and generating a lot of the excitement in the show's action scenes. There are many moments throughout all of the standalone Complex series that I couldn't imagine being nearly as good if not for the soundtrack. In terms of characterization and writing, the series finds a happy medium between the original manga and the film. In standalone Complex, the members of Section 9 can best be described as professional. They take their jobs very seriously and they are the best at what they do. This, I think, is a huge selling point for the series because it makes it much easier to take the story seriously. And since the characters actually care about what they're doing, it makes the stakes a lot higher for the viewer in kind. Whereas the manga convinced me that the actual storylines of each chapter didn't really matter, the series makes sure that the majority of its standalone episodes are still very interesting and has an overarching plot that grips like a vice. Unlike the film, however, the show also allows the characters to have some humanity, and also contains a huge source of levity in the form of the Tachikomas. These adorable machines are always saying something funny or cute when they're around, and the fact that they also happen to be by far the most interesting characters in the show means that their presence is always welcome. Between the Tachikomas, the soundtrack, and the more laid-back moments that the characters get now and then, Standalone Complex is able to explore a much wider range of emotions, as it can be serious when it needs to be or lighthearted when appropriate. Standalone Complex was written and directed by Kenji Kamiyama, and I think it's safe to say that the man is a fucking genius, as Standalone Complex is perhaps the most intellectual and well-read television series that I've ever watched. Whereas the original manga was mostly concerned with exploring the inner workings of its technological ideas and how these would affect people directly, Standalone Complex is more interested in the effects that these technological advancements would have on society as a whole. Thanks to being written during the internet age, the series expands on the concepts of networking and communication heavily, and feels, more than anything I've ever seen, like a true vision of what the post-singularity future will look like. Something which struck me early into watching the series was just how unimpressed it seemed to be with the broad concepts that underlie its sci-fi world. Whereas 5 years prior, Serial Experiments Lain presented the ideas that everyone is always connected and that there might be divisions between the self in the internet and the self in the real world as revelations, Standalone Complex presents these like obvious concepts that you should have known by now. The original manga poked fun of itself by having characters state that scenarios felt like something out of a sci-fi manga manga, and was altogether flippant about the tropes and trappings of the genre, as if it expected that the reader had already seen a lot of its ideas before. Standalone Complex goes one step further, seemingly expecting the viewer to already have a pretty firm grasp of many social, political, and psychological concepts. It isn't particularly difficult to watch in that it doesn't ask much of the viewer's patience and doesn't feature visuals or dialogue that would inspire vastly different interpretations between viewers, but it does seem to operate under the assumption that the viewer is a decently educated adult who spent many a long night thinking about the deeper philosophical and psychological underpinnings of the world around them. That's not to say that you have to be an intellectual to enjoy the series, as that would be a horribly pretentious claim, but I do think it requires at least some level of patience and intellectual maturity. I tried to watch this series when I was 16 and it bored me to tears. I kept passing out during the expository setups for each episode and gave up pretty early on, writing the series off as boring political drama. However, over time, I kind of fell in love with political dramas through stuff like The Wire and Mass Effect, and by the time I got back into Ghost in the Shell, I found that it rarely if ever tested my patience. I'd be lying if I said that the show is always totally exciting, but I would say that the boring exposition scenes almost always pay off in the episode's exciting climax. The grand central theme of the Standalone Complex franchise is that of the title itself. As presented in the series, a standalone complex is when a bunch of standalone events appear to be working together in one complex operation. This is first explored in the Laughing Man case that spans the series' first season. A series of incidents which appear to all be connected as the work of one criminal turn out to really be a series of unrelated incidents by anonymous individuals, which, intentionally or not, are attributed to a source that may not have ever existed to begin with. It's an interesting plot construct which feels highly relevant to the mimetic culture of modern internet, but even more fascinating is how the idea extends to the format of the show and to the format of society as a whole. The series is itself a standalone complex, as its many seemingly unrelated episodes continue to affect one another along the way, and eventually affect the outcome of the main storyline. In one episode, Bato gives one of the Tachikomas natural oil as opposed to the synthetic oil that they typically operate on. This begins to affect the nature of the Tachikomas as they slowly realize that in spite of the fact that they all share one linked consciousness because they all synchronize their memories constantly, the simple fact that they have unique bodies inherently causes them to develop individuality. When Bato's Tachikoma exhibits an inquisitive personality, it picks up a cyberbrain during its travels in one standalone episode. This cyberbrain becomes the subject of the next standalone episode about a filmmaker who only remains as a consciousness within his own cyberbrain and enraptures other cyborgs into his cyberbrain through his phenomenal film. These adventures also affect the individuality of the Tachikomas, culminating in a hyper-dense episode in which they all share an extended existentialist conversation about themselves. My good friend Ghostlightning wrote an in-depth close reading of this episode along with a few other notations about the Tachikomas, which I will link in the description and highly recommend. All of these elements come to a head later when, after being decommissioned by the Major, the Tachikomas re-emerge at the end of the series with the realization of their capacity for loyalty and self-sacrifice, leading to some of the biggest moments of awesomeness and heartwarming in the entire finale. How this show combines so many disparate elements into one functional, complete whole is just the same as how our own society is comprised of every individual person working to their own goals that shape the nature of society's progress. That this show at once embodies the nature of society and seeks to explore that very nature makes it one of the most brilliantly structured works of fiction that I've ever seen. Most of what I've said about the first season of Standalone Complex also applies to Second Gig, which takes on somewhat more socio-political themes and has a more dense but ultimately straightforward approach to its central storyline. It takes place on a much larger scale and has an overall darker, moodier tone to it, with about 4 episodes going by before there's even a scene set during the daytime. I will say that while the visuals are more clean and consistent in Second Gig, I didn't feel that the action scenes ever quite reached the same heights that they did in the first season, but it's altogether still a triumph of animation. Interestingly, whereas the first season consisted mostly of original content with only certain bits of dialogue and iconography that references the film and manga, Second Gig actually adopts many of the stories from the original manga, but in completely different contexts. Many of the characters and storylines of the manga are turned into episodic plots, but are tied into the central storyline, which is original to the anime. Having read the manga after watching all of Standalone Complex, it was pretty strange to see how differently these stories played out originally, in spite of how much dialogue from the show is taken straight from the manga. Likewise, the 2006 film Solid State Society, which is the last part of the Standalone Complex series, mixes up a bunch of the manga stories into one whole, but with a totally new central storyline. The ending of the film is also a brilliant reversal on the original Puppet Master story, which I won't spoil, but basically, whereas the original was about the Major being joined with another personality, the film is about personalities spawning from the Major's interactions with the internet, which made for a fascinating parallel between the original film and Solid State Society. Aside from the main story, there are also a bunch of short special episodes called Tachikoma Days, which are just little 1-minute comedy shorts about the Tachikomas being adorable. There's one special for each episode of the show, as well as both the original and 3D releases of the film, and a bunch of other random specials. Apparently there were 12 5-minute episodes that aired on TV at some point, but I couldn't manage to find them online. These shorts are a lot of fun, but not really remarkable on their own. There's a manga version of them too. The standalone Complex tie-in manga is apparently a direct adaptation of the TV series, though I haven't read it myself to confirm. There are also 3 tie-in novels which I haven't read, but apparently they're written by one of the show's screenwriters and tie in with the show's storyline, so I'm definitely interested in tracking them down at some point. Standalone Complex could have easily stayed fantastic throughout a 3rd season, and Production IG has stated that they were interested in continuing the series, but were prohibited by the cost. While Standalone Complex was released as a pay-per-view series on its original broadcast, and was ultimately a worldwide success, it was also the most expensive TV anime ever made, with a budget of over 800 million yen. Production IG were probably wise to quit when they did, as the Western anime market collapsed just a couple of years later. Moving back a little in the chronology, shortly after the release of Second Gig in 2004, Production IG actually released a direct sequel to the original film, led by the original staff, in the form of Ghost in the Shell 2: Innocence. Sort of like Solid State Society, Innocence takes parts from various chapters of the manga and combines them, while carrying the more heavy tone of the original film. Innocence is one of the most gorgeous animated films that I've ever seen. It features a constant fusion of 2D and 3D animation handled so well that sometimes I wasn't sure which one I was seeing. It has a thick cyber noir tone with brilliant cinematography and chunky, satisfying action scenes. That said, this is probably the hardest to watch animated iteration of the franchise. A large portion of the film consists of non-stop, disjointed philosophical quotations, and one total mindfuck scene that left me confused beyond the ability to catch up with the story. It's upsetting in a way because while the franchise has always presented some pretty advanced concepts, it typically does so in a straightforward way that invites the viewer to understand. Innocence explains enough that the viewer can figure out what has happened, but a lot of its themes and philosophical ideas are given such esoteric presentation that I wasn't really sure what the film was trying to say. Were it not so breathtaking to look at, I'm not sure I would have lasted all the way through the film, with my brain being so scrambled in its midsection. In 2008, the original film was remade and re-released as Ghost in the Shell 2.0. The trailers for this film claim that it's not simply a remake, but a total reimagining of the original film, and Mamoru Oshii claimed that the purpose of this remake was to make the original film more closely resemble the sequel. Both of these are gross overstatements. 2.0 mostly alters certain images, most of which were computer displays, into heavily orange CG versions. It also changes a couple of Motoko's standalone scenes into CG versions for no reason, and these bits look so different from the rest of the film that it doesn't even look like they're actually a part of said film. The opening title sequence is also made notably worse by the CG additions, so overall I would say that 2.0 is not the best version of the original film, and I'd only recommend it to people who have already seen the original and feel like rewatching it. After 2.0, besides some manga and novelizations that were still running, a 3D re-release of Solid State Society, and a bunch of Japan-only mobile phone games, the Ghost in the Shell franchise went into a bit of a hibernation again until 2013, with the emergence of yet another sub-franchise in the form of Ghost in the Shell Arise. Arise is the most different and altogether strange iteration of the franchise. It's a series of OVAs, of which 2 out of an eventual 4 have been released, which are written by To Ubukata, who also created the solid cyberpunk franchise Marduk Scramble. Arise is meant to be a prequel to, I guess, every other iteration of the franchise, and tells the story of how Section 9 originally formed. And that's what makes it weird. Arise manages to contradict the backstories presented in every other story, making it ineffective as a prequel to any of them. Moreover, some of the design choices made to emphasize its nature as a prequel are totally senseless. Major Kusanagi is made to look and sound younger than she does in the show and manga, but the series takes place after she's already been through years of military service and is fully matured into her cyborg abilities. There are scenes in Standalone Complex that take place before the timeline of Arise, in which Motoko looks the same as she does in any other episode. Plus, the original manga had begun with the formation of Section 9 anyways. Aramaki also looks younger, although this is strangely accurate to the way that his design looked in the early part of the manga before he was changed dramatically along its run. The sad thing about Arise is that when stacked up against any other anime that has or will come out this year, it's undoubtedly gorgeous. It features frequent, fluidly animated, and well-choreographed action scenes that are sure to get the blood pumping, and though I personally can't stand Kusanagi's new design, the show is overall pleasant on the eyes. It's only only
turned me
sad
on to
because
anime,
it
which
utterly
was
pales in comparison to standalone Complex. Arise lacks any of the expressive background art or overall tone that every other part of the franchise has. It doesn't look like a futuristic cyberpunk version of Japan, it just kinda looks like Tokyo as seen in virtually any other anime. It features the use of cybernetic stuff common to the series and has some themes of memory manipulation, but it doesn't seem to be saying anything about these themes. Altogether, it ends up feeling like a generic version of Ghost in the Shell that doesn't live up to the promise of any other part of the franchise. Arise is hard to recommend to new fans as it doesn't really capture what makes the franchise great, nor does it segue well into any of the other series thanks to its inaccurate backstory, and it's hard to recommend to existing fans for the same reason. If anything, the show is probably better for non-fans, as its story isn't as dense or intellectual as that of the manga or TV series, nor as dry and tonal as the films. It's easy to watch and full of cool action scenes, almost like it's meant to be Ghost in the Shell for teenagers. Maybe that's what it is. There's also a tie-in manga to Arise, which is like a prequel within a prequel, as so far it has focused exclusively on the story of how Bato and Major Kusanagi met during the war, prior to the events of the OVA. The manga is well drawn with some decent action scenes, but has very straightforward dialogue and characterization, and doesn't seem to utilize the cyberpunk aspects for much more than a way to enhance the combat. Altogether, neither version of Arise can really compare with all that's come before, which is particularly sad as they represent the current state of the franchise. The future of Ghost in the Shell isn't certain, but I'm sure that with its continued success and the strength of its lineage, it's bound to live on for years to come.
what do you think humanity is? What makes a being human? Does your ghost or self reside within your physical body?
So what exactly is the award for?
For saving the council money. I happened to mention to her one day that I've had the same broom for the last 20 years. She was very impressed and said, have a medal.
If you've had that broom for 20 years, have you actually swept any roads with it?
Well, of course. But I look after it well. This old broom has had 17 new heads and 14 new handles in its time.
It's easy to laugh along with the audience at the idiocy of this statement, but Trigger's rationale is actually in line with a thought experiment we've been scratching our heads over since we've had heads to scratch. Known as Theseus's paradox, it asks that if an object consisting of multiple parts, say the handle and head of an axe, has those elements replaced incrementally over time to the point where none of the original remains, is it still fundamentally the same object? When Shirao created Ghost in the Shell, it felt like a scary premonition of where technology was taking us at an alarming speed. He jumped to 2029 and guessed at where our hunger for technological advances would lead, and his result is both wonderful and terrifying. He manages to embed these ideas in an episodic chronicle of the life, or lives, of Major Motoko Kusanagi, a cyborg operative who carries out various undercover hijinks for Section 9, a cloak and dagger government agency that ride around in spider tanks and take out bad guys. In a world where we've doubled down on our reliance on technology, cybercrime rises to exploit that very dependence. New age criminals with enough technical savvy are able to hack into someone's fancy new eyes to grab sensitive material, or a victim's ghost to extract or implant memories, They can even hijack their cyberbrain completely to take control of their body. A new type of criminal needed a new type of law enforcement, and that's where the Major and the rest of Section 9 come in. The Major is one of the most enduring icons of anime, fantastically designed, thoroughly intriguing, and playing host to some of the deepest questions presented through her own musings and insecurities. She's a synthetic, full-body prosthesis augmented cybernetic human, which is a long-winded of saying she's largely fully cyberized. It's mentioned that she exceeds the 97.5% limit to cyberization, and this leads her to think that she is entirely artificial, paranoid that even her memories are fake implants to sedate and ground her. Whether this is true or not is never really addressed. Much like most of Ghost in the Shell's most interesting hooks, it's left for the viewer to ultimately decide upon. She's a jumble of paradoxes, even before you get to her many subtly different iterations, and it's these paradoxes that have made her not only a fantastic character, but a fascinating study into humanity itself. The Major acts as our constant to the many worlds of Ghost in the Shell, with her portrayal acting as a pretty good barometer of the tone of any given adaptation. In the original comic, for instance, the Major is playful, rude, boorish, goofy, occasionally a screw-up, and a bit of a horn dog. And she's bloody brilliant, honestly. Likewise, that run is also a bit slapstick, and a lot raunchier than its animated counterparts. A telling sign of things to come, as Shirao would later go on to focus exclusively on erotic art. The movie, on the other hand, is a lot more serious, with the Major playing a more believable role to a squad of special ops soldiers. She's no longer insubordinate, her slightly immature streak is completely gone, and she's devastatingly effective at pretty much every mission she undertakes. She's also used as a mouthpiece for some of Shirao's loftier tangents, spouting notes and mantras that would have previously been scribbled by the author in the margins of his work.
It sounds to me like you're doubting your own ghost.
What if a cyberbrain could possibly generate its own ghost, create a soul all by itself? And if it did, just what would be the importance of being human then?
It's worth saying now that the 95 movie is the only piece of Ghost in the Shell that doesn't have a stellar dub.
That's bullshit.
Sorry, Bato. The rest of the franchise is voiced brilliantly in English, but I'd go with the subtitles for this one. Also, I adore 90s anime sound effects. They're just so satisfying. Much like the comic, there's plenty of visual spectacle to make sure you're never bored, from balletic fight scenes, rampant nudity, and brief moments of hyperviolence. But if you start elsewhere in the series, you can come to the movies fully primed on all the characters and themes Oshii draws upon. This would be the order I'd recommend devouring the series in. It's not ordered chronologically or by quality, it's ordered by comprehension, what's going to introduce you to the complicated worlds in the most digestible way possible. And here's the secret to Ghost in the Shell. The place where you should begin just so happens to be my favourite content this franchise has to offer. Standalone Complex is a 2-season, 52-episode procedural cop show that is anything but procedural, spun off from Shirao's manga in a totally different direction to the one Oshii took with the movie. Thanks to the inherent episodic nature, Standalone Complex is better equipped to mirror the pacing the manga achieved. The series often zeroes in on easily digestible themes of the week,
It's a ghost dubbing device.
allowing the philosophies and characters of Ghost in the Shell to breathe in a way that no other medium has achieved, and delivers some of the best execution on Shirao's original ideas to date. The Major, our aforementioned litmus test to atmosphere, is serious here, capable and deadly,
You're damn right.
but also light-hearted, friendly, and occasionally funny in Standalone Complex. Thanks to the extended runtime of the show, she's given the chance, despite her lack of actual flesh, to become a fully fleshed out character. In fact, the show is able to introduce us to every member of Section 9 and the larger world of Ghost in the Shell in a more naturalistic way, exploring friendships and relationships with the pacing that other mediums don't have the luxury to do. This is ultimately the reason to start here, because it gives weight to everything that will happen in every other universe going forwards.
Huh? How do you do? I am a Tachikoma.
Now, you can't talk about Standalone Complex without mentioning the Tachikoma, Section 9's personal spider tanks that are used for backup, transport, and somehow stealth ops. They're based off of the manga's Fuchikoma, that are functionally the same but had to be renamed due to licensing issues. These quadrupedal mechs even got their own brilliant video game in 1997, which has the honour of being the only piece of Ghost in the Shell that shares its universe with the original manga. Shirao even wrote the game's story, and it's the only animated version of the original sarcastic Major that you'll find.
But look, see what I have.
Huh?
The new rookies gave me all these funny little stickers.
Ah, take them off, you moron.
Fuchikoma, just do your job and help the rookie.
If you can somehow get your hands on this one, I really do recommend it. Having played it through again to grab this footage, I can attest it's still brilliant fun to zip around as the hyper-agile Fuchis and take down giant robots. In Standalone Complex, they are deceptively integral to everything that happens over the 2 seasons.
Tachikoma, you ready?
Of course, I may not look it, but I am a professional.
These naive, high-pitched, childlike AI are a huge reason to love Standalone Complex, and it's in their conversations about identity, self, personal growth, God, and the soul that Ghost in the Shell bizarrely gets its most understandable notions, with the arcs of these adorable little robots feeling far more relatable than any postulations the human cyborgs deliver.
That reminds me, did you know that the word cyborg is now an issue? They say it's a discriminatory term for people who've been cyberized.
Knowingly, Standalone Complex bookends each episode with a 2-minute Tachikomatic Days short, in which a bundle of the robots chew over the themes presented in that week's episode, or just goof around for some slapstick comedy. Standalone Complex isn't a perfect ride, however. There's bound to be a couple of duds in 52 episodes of anime, but for the most part this is top-class stuff that deserves to go down as one of television's greats.
And now, hey, you're under arrest for threatening to kill the Superintendent General.
What?
Standalone Complex serves as a fantastic introduction to Ghost in the Shell, and after making your way through it, you're pretty well equipped to explore the franchise however you wish. The movies will make a lot more sense now. The original manga will feel like a continuation of what you've just finished, or the Arise OVAs and the subsequent new movie, appropriately titled The New Movie, can send you back to where it all began, when the Major was first putting Section 9 together. Arise is a prequel done right, and it's just flipping cool. I do want to stress again though that these timelines do not feed into each other. Arise may be a prequel, but it's only a prequel to the notion of Ghost in the Shell. These are entirely different worlds that would throw up serious plot holes if they were stitched together. Instead, they are reimaginings that skew things significantly in order to further explore what Ghost in the Shell is. It's the reason you can enjoy these completely out of order, and an ingenious, unique way to explore an established universe. Which brings us to the Hollywood film that debuted last year.
まさかね、公開した後で、日本ではだからほとんど当たらなかった。でもアメリカやヨーロッパでその評判になるとは今にも思っている。
With the surprise success of Ghost in the Shell in the West.
Emma, guess what? I did get your package. So I'm going to be doing a stream on what is it? Monday? Monday I'm going to be doing a stream that is going to be my celebration of 3 years on DLive. It's going to be an anniversary stream. So it'll be exclusive to DLive, and I'm going to open up a piece of mail from Eric as well as your package. So that's when we're gonna do it. I'll stay tuned for times. I haven't figured that out yet. All right. I'll keep it going.
And Hollywood's obsession with turning old properties into new ones, it was only a matter of time before we got an American version. This is the only piece of the puzzle I'd suggest should come after watching the Oshii 95 movie. Because whilst it isn't a remake, again, the plot, the world and the Major are different to everything that's come before. It cribs a lot of the best moments from the movie and standalone complex. And I think that it does a disservice to both of these productions to watch their live-action counterparts first. But, and this is important, I do recommend you watch it. The film got a lot of pre-release flack for whitewashing the Major, and this negative buzz harmed the chances of one of the better Hollywood adaptations we've had. Oshii even defended the film's casting, and in a world where bodies are interchangeable and disposable, it's not hard to see why. But I think it would be naive to say that this move wasn't made because of how much money Johansson could pull in. Despite this, the movie is fine. It's not perfect by any stretch, and a lot of Ghost in the Shell's introspective soul is lost in favour of admittedly impressive CGI. But it does a competent job at translating the series for an audience that wouldn't have otherwise discovered it, which is ultimately what American adaptations should achieve. It's got plenty of visual spectacle to carry it. Really, some of these scenes are fantastic, and are lifted in such a way that I couldn't help but be thrilled that some of my favourite moments have been recreated so faithfully.
What can I say, little one?
Ghost in the Shell simultaneously preys on both our desires to improve ourselves and our fear of losing everything that makes us, us. It's a scary world where cybercriminals are able to turn our own bodies against us. But it's hard to deny the allure of being able to buy your way to a harder, better, faster shell, tailored to whatever whim you're partial to. In an age where the anonymity of the internet has us battling for individuality more than ever, where the concept of identity is a huge part of the dialogue, Ghost in the Shell feels more relevant now than it ever did. It's these differences that make every iteration, yes, every iteration, worth watching. With every voice added, the conversation becomes a more interesting one. Ghost in the Shell has ascended from a property that talks about identity to an example of identity, and it's one that's well worth discussing.
The first Ghost in the Shell movie is a classic, but often overlooked, I think, is the sequel, Ghost in the Shell 2: Innocence. It seems considerably different, and really there's a lot that immediately sets it apart from the original. The strange implementation of 3D CGI into 2D cell animation, this repeated use of biblical or philosophical quotes, and the convoluted narrative, which will not slow down for you to catch up, and yet moves so slowly. It's like the exact opposite of the first Ghost in the Shell, which had a pretty slow pace, but you can only complicate a narrative so much in an 82-minute runtime. But in a few meaningful ways, Ghost in the Shell 2 is almost a reflection of the original, or more so a repeat. This is actually somewhat logical, and why the movie works as a sequel more so than as a standalone film, which is good because we're building on something. We've swapped out protagonists, where the Major was the heroine of the first movie, and Bato is the hero of the second. 2 characters, 1 journey. Bato and the Major eventually arrive at the same place, but of course, the getting there looks different each time. Both movies work toward the same revelation, which has entirely to do with the Major's self-actualization. The first movie, despite being an adaptation, feels like it's specifically designed to tell the Major's story. She's the field commander for Public Security Section 9, and has been a full-body replacement cyborg for long enough that she has no memory of her original body. And the robot body, the eponymous shell, belongs more to the government than it does to her. Then along comes the Puppet Master, who can remotely implant false memories, and she gives up the ghost as well. In this world, the Major owns nothing of herself, so in the end, she recreates herself, claiming an ownership that poor Bato just can't wrap his head around.
That's bullshit, okay? Stop with the angst.
For the Major, it's about her identity, and critical to her self-acceptance is joining the net, which, by the way, is vast and infinite. To all outside appearances, she vanished. For Bato, the Major's self-acceptance registered as the mysterious loss of a friend, and so in driving, investigating, and shooting his way to the truth of where the Major went, his journey is about grief. This is something that Brian Rue points out in the second edition of his excellent book, Stray Dog, The Films of Mamoru Oshii, and grief as a primary theme for the movie is a requisite foundation for understanding the rest of what is at once a fundamentally foreign, yet commercial film, but also an intensely personal expression. But something we need to address, along that line, is the dialogue in this movie. Some personal expression using a bunch of other writers' work to stand in for his own.
彼ら秋の花ごとく群がり落ち、狂乱した混沌は吠えたけり。今度はミルトンか。だが俺たちはサタンじゃねえぜ。
Well, literary or historical allusions are a shorthand for ideas, and that's kind of what writing is conceptually. It's a shorthand for communication. At every level of abstraction, modes of expressions are borrowed, not to trivialize the potential fraudulence of plagiarizing, of course. There's a better thematic explanation for it, I think. Of course, for instant recall of these quotes, Bato has clandestine access to Google behind those eyes, but there's this idea of connectivity. Bato invokes history in a broader global culture and applies it to this dreamy future world, which itself can't decide where or when it really is. Universal human experience through the arts and literature and religious studies, this is the constant throughout, no matter where we end up. These quotes are mostly existential, questioning reality and the meaning of existence, but that's on the terms of the audience's benefit. In a more meaningful way, this is how our heroes choose to grapple with the main themes of the story, searching for rationalizations to the wacky, wonderful things they encounter. Like, please, somebody before me must have made sense of what I'm feeling. Ghost in the Shell 2's reserved pace and obfuscating dialect frustrate the potential appreciation for its concise story structure. Because this is a mystery, we'll have to work backward from the ending revelation and consider it not only essential, but the linchpin of the entire story. That's what helped me begin to understand the movie, though understanding it is an ongoing work, as it arguably is with all movies. So here we have something of a story structure, although it is not a temporal one like Act 1, 2, and 3. I might break it up instead as character, and then plot and theme, and then problem and solution on the ends there. So if we begin at the start here, we establish the problem to be solved by the end. The way this movie works on the basic level is that this is a character problem, and it's solved by function of the plot, as guided by theme. Each works together and dovetails in the end, mathematical beauty, and with a deliberateness that speaks to a singular vision, alongside what's more instantly apparent like the beauty of the art design. So this character problem is outlined at the very start, in a previously on Ghost in the Shell. As we know, the Major is gone, or possibly dead, and Bato misses her. We explore the depth of this problem with these scenes depicting Bato's home life, which is lonely but for a basset hound named Gabriel. We've seen this exact scene before, in Oshii's most acclaimed live-action film, Avalon. In that movie, the main character, Ash, is disconnected from her physical reality, so while the virtual world of Avalon is exciting and dangerous, her real world is sad and lonely. We see this too with Bato, but Ghost in the Shell 2 is not ripping off the earlier film so much as both movies share a common source, Mamoru Oshii's personal life. He doesn't relate to human beings so easily, preferring dogs instead, and indeed he has a basset hound named Gabriel. Ultimately, in her absence, we understand the scope of the Major's presence, that she left a hole in Bato's life. And that hole is more like a void that swallowed up the vibrant, if decaying, Hong Kong facsimile of the original movie. In place of that environment is this new city, which works as a reflection of Bato's mental landscape. As such, there are bits and pieces we might associate with the Major. There's this dreamlike distrust of reality, exemplified by the allegedly poor match of 2D and 3D animation, and most importantly, it's dark. Section 9 is consumed by shadow. It has no geography, it's just blackness. For almost its entire runtime, Ghost in the Shell 2 takes place after hours. Although it doesn't make too much literal sense, unless they're actually on a spaceship the whole time, it makes figurative sense. When the Major walked out of Bato's life, the sun was going down, and so for Bato, it's been night ever since. We come to Ghost in the Shell 2 for the third part of our structure here for plot/theme, the investigation. Theoretically, of course, because the real reason we watch something like this is because it's called Ghost in the Shell 2. But the second act of movies is usually what's on sale, the film's content, the meat of the experience. In science fiction films, sometimes the second act is all there is, or it's non-existent, after a high-concept first act setup. In this film, the unfolding plot is our facility to reaching the solution to Bato's problem. It's economic, especially when we consider the fruits of this mathematical formula, like hand to claw with an illegal Chinese model cyborg. Section 9 is investigating the murders of men by female androids designed for sex, gynoids, naturally. It may be a malfunction, but when Section 9 gets involved, you begin to think something else is going on. To find out what, Bato and Tokusa pay a visit to the crime lab, the creepy and sterile domain of one Haraway, no first name. Of course, because the first name is Donna, after the feminist scholar whose work A Cyborg Manifesto was doubtlessly an influence on Oshii. The ensuing discussion is oblique and becomes almost surreal, but for the most part establishes the why of the case, that these gynoids had illegal ghosts downloaded onto them to make them more human. This scene also introduces the main thematic pieces, the relationship between humans and their creations. This time, and this is a big change for cyberpunk, it's not exactly about what does this simulacrum say about us, but what does this simulacrum say? If we gave it a voice, would it speak or would it scream? But seriously, a round of applause for cyberpunk. This is baby steps. We intertwine this A plot, let's say, about the gynoids, with a subplot, this kind of impending doom.
You've stepped inside the kill zone.
Bato is being watched, but as we see, it's a guardian angel over his shoulder. This is also important, in hindsight. It's an expression of the truth behind the Major's disappearance. It drops here for the usual dramatic reasons, but also I suspect to lead up to that final revelation, so that the Major coming back from the dead isn't a complete shocker. And then we come upon our friend Kim, resident laughing man and center of the film's most chilling sequence. By the way, Ghost in the Shell 2 is certified PG-13 in the United States, where the original was R-rated, but that was mostly for nudity. If you're a young and naive parent looking to watch these movies with the youngins, which is not probably advised, Ghost in the Shell, the first one, might weird your kid in like a sexual way, but Ghost in the Shell 2 will give your kid nightmares. In the tradition of Existence and Avalon, Tokusa becomes trapped in a hallucinatory loop of the same scene, and Bato has to break him free. It's a more intimate look at the cyberbrain invasions introduced in the first movie as tragic, where a lonely loser can be convinced he has a family. And here, the terror of being trapped in a mind game is illustrated on the periphery with a creepy marionette mansion mise-en-scène. It's mortifying. After we settle down, Kim begins to philosophize and seems to continue the narrative begun by Haraway. He talks about how we don't cry for the gutted fish, and while Bato appears all business, I think this narrative is sinking in. In the standalone complex Mythos, Tokusa is the least cyborg member of Section 9, in terms of field members, along with Saito, the sniper. There isn't really a Section 9 in the Oshii movies, but this fact still holds true, and the detective's physical vulnerability sets him apart from Bato. And yet, it's Bato who feels like the outsider, the quiet loner who can't fully relate to the human Tokusa with his family, and so he goes searching for the polar opposite. For Bato, the welcome home party awaits at the bottom of the ocean, as far from civilization as he can get. He takes a deep dive and infiltrates the Locus Solus submarine. Now, Locus Solus is a French science fiction novel from 1914, but it's also the name of the gynoid manufacturer. You gotta figure social stigma keeps them so out of sight, but Bato sees all with those sleepless eyes. The Major returns, partially downloading herself in a gynoid, and she helps Bato before he's overrun by killer sex mannequins. We learn the nature of Locus Solus's connection to the Yakuza, that the mob is trafficking in young girls who are kept on the submarine and ghost dubbed into the gynoids. A copy of the girl's mind is downloaded into the sex doll, making it more realistic. The victim at the crime scene earlier was a Locus Solus employee, Jack Volkerson, who wanted to rescue the girls by essentially programming the gynoids to kill, which would attract police attention. Ghost dubbing originated in the story on which this film is loosely based, Robot Rondo, from the Ghost in the Shell manga, and was also featured in the episode Idolator from the first season of Standalone Complex. The imprinting of sentience on gynoids, and programmed self-destructive sentience at that, fits nicely as the final piece of Haraway and Kim's thematic framework. Mirroring our image and our creations without regard for the consequence is a violation of the creation's agency. So now we're beginning to think about the creation. Children and dolls, anthropomorphizing dogs, crying for the gutted fish. There is this overall indication that we need to expand our definition of life, develop a broader empathy for things, as more and more things are being introduced, like androids and life forms born on the sea of information. Gynoids deserve this empathy too, but instead they're used up and thrown away. We do to them what we will, whether sex, death, or a forced birth that overrides identity. As the Major says,
Blessed are those with voices.
Oh my god.
If those dolls had voices, I bet each and every one of them would have screamed, I don't want to be a human.
I need to.
And so we return to our structure, and now we can connect everything. And just in time, because the question still hanging is, why? Why empathy for gynoids? What does that mean? Well, relax. We're at the finish line. Take a load off. The Major is here now, and if there's anything she's good at, it's making people feel comfortable.
I'm leaving.
Bato is now able to look at the Major in a new light. Although it's not exactly made explicit, his relationship to the world is changed. His definition of life has expanded to encompass the gynoid, and now the Major. He can finally reconcile what she's become, because he no longer thinks in black and white, life and death. And for the audience, we have a parallel revelation that the Major is back, where she returns in this partial form, indicating that not only is she very much alive and kicking, she'll always be there. For Bato, it's this lengthy philosophical justification, but for the audience who doesn't necessarily inhabit the character's headspace, there's a better shorthand for the same message, and it's more tangible and more entertaining. Freaky, though. And so the resolution of the plot of the homicidal gynoid case is also the resolution of the character, and the whole thing was driven by this very Oshii, almost alien worldview that is at once bizarre, but on closer inspection perhaps all too human. All the pieces of the story connect, each of them matter, and each of them offers something valuable in themselves. Perfect cinematic storytelling philosophy. The science fiction police procedural is a wonderful vehicle for philosophy of any kind. The detectives will uncover not only the culprit, but some cosmic truth about the nature of all things. Someone like Oshii naturally makes great use of this, as he did with the first two Patlabor movies. And as with those two, the filmmaker has this talent to take something fantastical and recognize something familiar within. I wish there was more like this movie, because as much as I love the first movie, and Standalone Complex, Second Gig in particular, Ghost in the Shell 2 Innocence haunts me like no other. It isn't the easiest movie to watch all the time, you're not just going to throw that in the player, but its world and visuals are just as beautiful as its message. A rewarding movie, and also a rare one. The closest antecedents in the genre, I suppose, are Jinro, but mostly Blade Runner, and that's something that we say about all cyberpunk. In terms of tone, if you like Ghost in the Shell 2, I'd also highly recommend Memories of Murder and True Detective Season 1. They're close, and they're all good for different reasons, but this movie has a certain something that isn't easily replicated. Sometimes you can't just copy something into a new form, and maybe it's best we don't try. The Ghost in the Shell franchise lives on over 10 years later, and it continues to evolve, and as if by magic, it's still good.
One of the most iconic scenes in anime history is this scene from Ghost in the Shell. Only running about 3 minutes and 20 seconds, it not only says a lot about the whole world, but just as much for the story and the main protagonist, Motoko Kusanagi. What I always find interesting about this scene is the fact that it has little to do with the plot of the film. It takes place right in the middle of the film, and as a result, the movie stops its pace just to focus on this scene. Because if you actually take a look at the scenes that take place before and after the scene, it is almost as if this scene was made to stand out. It's the point where the film transitions as we are chasing down the latest suspect in the Puppet Master case, and now have a break in the film to start the gears up again and get the second half of the film rolling. What I always enjoy about animation is how the creators are forced to strip down the story and focus on showing, not telling. Ghost City is the perfect title for this transition because it stands well on its own enough to be a short film, full of amazing visuals and symbolism everywhere. It's hard not to watch the scene without trying to analyze at least one aspect of it. The common theme throughout these shots is identity, as it is very clear our protagonist is passing through the city. It is very clear that the objects in the environment are manipulated by what she sees and how she views it and herself. What is being told visually? Not just the entirety of the scene as a whole, but individually when you break down the elements and the movement and just focus on the stills of each shot. Let's take a look at them. In this first shot, we see a plane flying over a city. It is interesting to notice how large the plane is in relation to the city, flying like it is right above it, trying to compensate for the advertisements and the scale of the buildings that make the plane feel cramped and small. This could easily be about Motoko's feelings toward the city and how she feels the need to protect it in spite of knowing how much is going on in the city for anyone to even notice, which is why it looks like a large shadow flying over the city, something dark that you don't take notice of quickly. Now in the next shot, we focus in on the opposite side of the plane by means of a reflection from the windows of the building. What is interesting here is that we see the plane leaving the advertisements, which are still dominating. You even notice the red one taking up the majority of the shot. It's in this photo where we see the plane is taking a bird-like figure onto it with the outline of a wing and bird feathers. And like before, the shadow-like figure begins to blend into the shadows of the buildings. Taking these two shots into account, it feels like they are both representing Motoko's work, or in the film, the mission they had just previously had of catching the suspect, making a lot of noise enough for people to notice, but always quickly disappearing right after as people go back to their lives. In this shot, we see a boat inside of a canal of what looks like a shopping center, but what I notice the most of the shot is the colors and tone and the overall feeling you get just looking at it. Even though it's full of people and crowded in advertisements, it still feels empty and alone. Now we take a look at the boat from the reverse angle, seeing it approaching us as people walk along the side of the walkways. What makes these shots very similar to the first shots is that we focus in on a transportation that is both approaching us and leaving us in the reverse shots. You notice a little trend that is showing up here, that this futuristic city isn't what you think of. It's very dark and brown and feels dirty and old, very much a contrast to the time period this film takes place in. Now these next set of shots all focus on Motoko. In this photo, a woman is sitting, drinking a refreshment at a table alone. This shot and the last shot very much relate to each other by focusing in on a woman that looks just like Motoko, sitting in a restaurant. It's hard to say specifically what the woman actually does look like Motoko, or if Motoko is just seeing herself there. Maybe it's from a memory, or maybe it's wishful thinking. Motoko takes notice of this woman and begins to stare at her, whether if it's because she is analyzing her or just getting reminded of something. She turns to look forward with almost a scared look on her face. We can only assume it's because she realizes something from what she had just seen, but just looking at the image alone, you could say she notices something that's in front of her. It's interesting that we end on this shot because it's very clear that there is tons of thought going through her head. Was it that it was a glimpse of her former life, or is it that her line of work and actions don't really get recognized at all? If we take a step back from these shots and we begin to speculate when this entire section takes place, almost every line of dialogue that up to this point from Motoko has been questions about herself, her identity, and other philosophical ideas. I had always found her character to be a little weird when I first watched the movie, but the interesting thing is, if you were to follow this scene from the point in which Motoko leaves her apartment to start the day, a lot makes sense. I'm not saying that this scene takes place then, but if it does take place then, everything that comes out of Motoko's mouth makes sense all of a sudden. I love the atmosphere this scene creates as the city becomes overcast and slowly begins to rain at night. We focus in on the construction construction building with tons of signs in the focus.
Oh, no
but
problem,
what is
Eric.
more interesting is that this is where
You'll be in the
Motoko looks
giveaway,
at
not to worry,
next,
you're
as
set.
if this was what was catching her attention. Is it that she doesn't feel complete? Because we notice that this building under construction isn't even being worked on anymore. It feels very empty and abandoned. The key visuals to make you notice that this has been abandoned is the advertisements. They are distracting you once again as the figure in the back fades, as if time has moved on for anyone to care about. Is this how Motoko feels? Now in the next shot to follow, we see trash in the water as the signs of the ads are in the shadows of the background, above the trash that had been thrown out. The thing about this trash is that everything from this is man-made, machines and other objects that are no longer needed anymore. They are thrown away as the city moves forward. This feels like the following result from the abandoned building. The next few shots all match up with each other in the common thing of Motoko's identity, showing us mannequins as they are all made to be human-like but contain no life within themselves. They are just empty shells. We even see Motoko pose as one of these mannequins and even see a room full of them, showing that there is no distinguishment between them. And last, it begins to rain. It becomes darker and the city begins to become more active, with ads and everything bright and shining and moving past you to make sure you don't miss them. They are very clearly there for distraction, and we know who they are distracting, but what does this have to do with Motoko? It is interesting how this can go in a number of ways. Is it Motoko is still stuck in her own world and wants to live like the rest, similar to a child wanting to stay up late, but she is ultimately still tied to her job, the ones who made her and own her? She even asked this question earlier. Is this an example of her being tied down? It is fascinating how one scene from a film can bring so many questions and ideas, and even for interpretation. Ghost in the Shell is full of this, and you can dive into this film in so many ways.
There is an iconic theme in the history of anime that everybody stumbles across eventually, a piece that can be recognized immediately after the first ring of the bells. As the choir starts the accompaniment of what is considered one of the most influential scenes of the past, no one is left to wonder why this song had such a huge impact. One of the many reasons behind the popularity of this OST is how these simple melodies can incorporate the topics explored throughout the 1995 film Ghost in the Shell. With its opening theme, The Making of Cyborg, director Mamoru Oshii managed to create a scene that conveys multiple messages on various levels. In this video, I'm going to show a new side of the Ghost through the hidden layers of music. I'm Best Sakai, and let's step into yet another world. Listen to this traditional Bulgarian harmony and observe the similarities between the two styles. Kawai successfully mashed together the two approaches by using Japanese folk singers. In a 2010 interview, the composer revealed that initially, the director requested primitive drum sounds for the opening. This was later developed into the genreless piece with the addition of the choir. The rhythmic accompaniment and the chant adds up to a tribal effect of getting into a trance, as if this semi-conscious state would further strengthen the difference between one's own and cybernetic body. On its own, the soundtrack is quite interesting. However, if viewed together with the movie, and especially the concepts behind the story, it turns out to be a true masterpiece. In order to understand how the standalone tracks fit into this puzzle, we have to look at the cultural and historical context of this tale. Originating from the 1989 manga, Masamune Shiro's creation had a reference to Arthur Koestler's The Ghost in the Machine, a 1967 philosophical psychology book. The expression itself encapsulated the concept of Cartesian dualism, addressing the mind-body relationship, as this philosophy states that the mental is capable of existing outside of the body, while the body cannot think on its own. The title itself has an inherent stance on how to approach this topic. Apart from the heavy influence of the aforementioned idea, there is another force that left its marks on the score. While The Ghost in the Shell is undoubtedly an intelligent way of describing the questions raised by the story, the other part of the manga's title is Koukaku Kidoutai, Mobile Armored Riot Police. This was added to the title upon the request of Koichi Yuri, the coordinator at Young Magazine, who asked for a more grandiloquent title back then. The letter shows us another aspect of the subject, that is the impacts of the cyberpunk genre. Tracks such as Ghost Hack and Puppet Master are relying on the traditional approach, the former being a drum track, while the latter uses bells and gongs to convey the sense of time. The Puppet Master uses synthesized sounds, but the effect is not as dominant here. Virtual Crime, on the other hand, has a modern touch to it through the usage of the guitar as well as its continuous synthetic accompaniment, which is then turned into an artificial vocal track. Excess, Night Stalker, and Floating Museum are all very similar. As the story reaches its climax, the soundtrack reverts back to the older phase to emphasize the decision Kusanagi is about to make. The camera shows the tree of life, the human side, tainted by the bullets, representing the fight between natural and artificial forces as the sound of the gongs remind us of the initial steps we made towards understanding the major. By the time we get to the resolution, the music fades away. It is up to us, the viewers, to evaluate the turn of events. And the silence that is present in the last scenes is haunting. This is the true heart of the matter, the real ghost in the shell. The mysterious atmosphere of this world is well explored within the realms of music, and everything traces back to the opening song. Making of Cyborg symbolizes a merge between lovers soon becoming husband and wife, a union between Kusanagi and Project 2501.
Welcome to What's Anime. Today we're going to talk about visual storytelling in a film, and really what makes good visual storytelling. Ghost in the Shell has some of the best uses of visual storytelling in any film, and today we're just going to look at one scene in particular that uses this technique. 2 points to add about visual storytelling is that it adds ease of following the story, and also for the audience, they can tell what's going on without any dialogue really happening, using the visuals around them to tell the story. Let's watch this scene from the film in which a man is being interrogated by Togusa, but the information that he's actually telling him is mostly about his memories and about how he was just hacked, and that a lot of his memories that he thinks he remembers aren't really true. We also see his apartment and how it's empty, and how it doesn't really add up to the information he just told him. This leads him to believe that he had just been hacked and his memories replaced with someone else's. And for most part, he doesn't really believe them until he sees a picture, but this time he sees the picture is much different than before. A while back, we were able to see that he saw his family in the photo, but this time as he looks into the picture, he actually realizes that that's not actually what he was actually seeing, and that it was just a picture of himself and his dog. And at the same time, we see Makoto and Bato watching him behind the glass as given the information about his memories. Also a focus on Makoto and what she is thinking during this interrogation. We also change to a new shot, but still focusing on her, really kind of emphasizing what she is thinking about this situation. So let's analyze this scene individually in frames. In the first photo, we see a man being interrogated. He seems to have the face that he doesn't really know what's going on or what's happening, but we, the audience, knows because of the story. But if we just look at this visually, it does say a lot. One way is the way Togusa is handling interrogation. It's not an intense or serious, like he believes that he knows something kind of look. He's actually treating him fairly nice, and he looks like he's explaining something
Matrix
to him,
took
almost
a lot
in a way
from
that he feels
anime.
bad for him. In the next shot, we get a frame of his apartment, and the first thing we notice is that it's very empty, it's dark, and we see the covers pulled back to see the city. The TV is on with no one watching, and the room itself is just unused and very dark inside. It very much looks like a person who lives alone lives there. In this next frame, we see the man looking at a photo, and he has a face of an
90s,
expression
right?
that he kind of realized something, and it's almost like he's seeing something he never saw before.
Clips went out of business,
which is
and then
surprising
Dark
him
Horse
and shocking him.
Comics started
And in the
bringing this.
context of the frame, the man is
And a lot
seeing
of
the
stuff.
true photo of what he thought was his family, only to realize that that's not what he was seeing this whole time, kind of leaving the entire motivation of his actions kind of useless, based on a story that wasn't even true. In the next shot, we see both Makoto and Bato watching the interrogation, and the man reacting to the photo through the glass. From this position, we get the feeling that this is just a routine job, and that they're just here because of the case they're involved in. But what really changes is in the next photo. This is when things get more interesting. We get a close-up of Makoto and looking at her, looking at the man, as well as a reflection. In this frame, we close up on Makoto. We see her face and her reaction to this. It's as if she can relate to this man she's looking at. We even see herself reflected off the glass. A technique in filmmaking is having the person on the right have the upper hand, and to relate this to the photo, her reflection's on the right inside the interrogation room with the man whose memories was erased and manipulated, leaving the real Makoto on the outside. This is a blank stare that may seem like nothing, but actually tells a lot the more when you take a moment to analyze it. We ask the question, what is she thinking? Does she feel like she is just like the man inside, or is she afraid that the same thing has already happened to her? This is a great shot because it not only makes us question everything that's going on, but we get to know our main character without any dialogue. We get to have a sense of what she thinks about and what's really important to her. And that leads to the next photo, which is a very similar shot to the previous one, but in terms of tone and color, it's completely different. This time we get to see her full face, as well as everything behind her, leaving a much different color, much colder color this time. And we see that she's still looking at the man, but this time you almost question, is she actually looking at the man or something else, because she's in different thought. All these photos all relate to each other through visual storytelling and really show how good a film can be when you use visuals to tell the story instead of through the dialogue and exposition. Also giving you an opportunity to really analyze and even go deeper than a film really expects you to do. There are a lot of other anime and films that you can really notice visual storytelling used great. All you gotta do is look for them. This is What's Anime, and see you next time.
I'm a full film school's dropout, so I
Hello and
still have
welcome,
an
one
interest
and
in it,
all.
though.
My name is Brandon Martin. And
This is
today
a
I'm going to
lecture.
be breaking down the philosophical and allegorical meaning of the Ghost in the Shell anime. So Ghost in the Shell was one of my favorite animes when I was growing up as a kid. And I feel that there is significant knowledge within many older animes. Unfortunately, nowadays anime has just been completely westernized and is a debauchery of what it used to be. Ghost in the Shell is not only an accurate look at a futuristic post-humanism totalitarian society, it is also loaded with deep occult imagery, philosophy, and allegory, as well as bringing up many crucial social and moral issues. The film operates on several different levels. It is an initiation of sorts, a deep look into a hypothetical future world stifled with dialectical materialism. Set in 2029, with the advancements of cybernetic technology, the human body can now be augmented or even completely replaced with cybernetic parts along with a cyber brain. A mechanical casing for the human brain that allows access to the internet and other sorts of networks. The term ghost or geist is referring to the consciousness or soul inhabiting the body, aka the shell. So as we can see right off the bat, we're getting into some deep philosophical ideas about whether there is a soul, a ghost, and what's going to happen to us when we do, move into a transhumanist society. But the symbolism in the title alone has so much esoteric meaning. The use of the triangle in the middle of the phrase Ghost in the Shell. The triangle is a symbol of the triune aspect of the self, thought, emotions, and action, mind, body, and spirit, balance, and the spiritual nature of ourselves.
Some
It
dynamics
is placed
going on in this
properly
drawing.
over top of the shell, which would be the square, representing the material, physical, or earthly existence, giving us a subliminal idea for the ontological questions ahead. The triangle always goes on top of the square, because the triangle is the spirit, the spiritual nature of the self, and the square.
That's why the use of the
represents
triangle in
four
the
base elements
in the
of the
title.
material world. The film dabbles in the idea of complete uncertainty about AI and the future for AI, the postmodern transhumanist world, whether or not man will merge with machine or find another path to spiritual ascension. Because a lot of people think that by merging with technology, this is going to be some sort of ascension. But as this film plays out, we can see that it's quite contradictory to that, and the ontological questions are still remaining even after we go through these transhumanist augmentations and alterations. It plays with a scary but futile idea of AI self-awareness. Many confuse thinking with computation, meaning a lot of people think that since a computer can process data, then it can think itself. There's a difference in the idea of actually thinking and being capable of computing. Like the limited view proposed by René Descartes, I think, therefore I am. But in this case, it would be more I compute, therefore I am, which is a self-defeating argument and leaves out the metaphysical and spiritual ideas. The overall story is a Hegelian dialectical approach to the ontological questions about AI and our possible sublation with machines, meaning synthesis. The film starts with an opening assassination scene, and it gives us an idea of its geopolitical world and what is going on in this world. Global espionage of sorts. So we have these different sections battling each other, which are all ultimately controlled by overarching elite system. And we can see the society is in complete oppression from this overarching power. So it's a hierarchical system. And as you move down the hierarchy, you have more conflicts between the people and the systems in place. Each region battles with each other because it has been balkanized. The next is one of the most crucial scenes, I feel, to give us the starting point of what I'm talking about with the ghost in the shell. We see a creation scene, a mechanical creation scene that alludes to a Western alchemical transmutation. It starts with an empty shell being formed into creation by mechanical means, each step adding more aesthetic layers, with the end result matching a female human appearance. We can see this as a resurrection theme. And
Art, philosophy,
during
and manga,
this
yes.
process, the shell is passing through a white
That's our
clean
trifecta
liquid.
here.
And
That's our triangle.
think of this as albedo in the alchemical transmutation. So in alchemy, first we have nigredo, which is the blackening, and then which is what we started out with, and then we have albedo, which is the whitening, which refers to fertility and cleanliness and the nurturing factors as well. And we also see in the scene clear waters, which can be looked at as the womb of creation. So the white creamy liquid symbolically is representing the application of humanity to the machine. And it is also, exoterically a protein bath, but esoterically you are looking at the albedo process of the magnum opus coming out of ego, because you're starting with a machine which has no emotions, no empathy, no compassion, which is represented as ego or fixed salt, the prima materia, and then you're applying the next layer or transforming into the next layer, which is coming out of darkness into light. So we're seeing that process taking place here. The female body or shell resides in the fetal position, dropping down even into clearer waters, the water breaking of the birthing process. So this is about, like I said, the water's breaking. And so this entire section is pretty much a birthing section. As she arises out of the water, symbolically could be looked at as a new baptism, in a way, if we wanted to associate that here. We see her new perfected body. And then we cut to her lying on the bed, staring directly at the viewer, as if to be looking straight.
I'm trying to draw more without the wrist guard.
So it's almost like breaking the fourth
do
barrier.
end up having to ice it
But
after.
this will be correlated and parallel.
I find it so
with
impeding.
later scenes that we see in the film. So you're going to find a lot of
But yeah, it's doing much better than it was, for sure.
But this is also giving us the idea of coming out of the unconscious mind into the conscious mind, an awakening, or even a reawakening. Because as we can see later on in the film, she probably has done this many, many times. And that's why she called this the second birth. And that is why also I decided to associate the idea of baptism before. So, by the way, I'm expecting people to have already watched this film. So if you have not watched this film, I recommend that you stop now and you go and watch the film. But this is the process of her awakening, her becoming conscious, coming out of this dreamlike world, which is also a part of duality. A lot of this reminds me of the new TV version of Westworld, and even the old film as well.
That's some black ink.
But in the new one,
to tie this all together,
you have the main character, Dorothy, which is a play on Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz. And she lives between the two worlds. The theme park,
yeah,
which is
slowly
the
but surely,
dream world, and then the real world, where she is programmed. But also, if you look at the intro and how these beings are created in Westworld, it is very reminiscent of the intro to this anime, specifically being the tie-ins with the white creamy liquid that they use to, add flesh to the body. So it's representing the flesh of the body itself. So I highly recommend looking into that series, and I will be covering that in a future video. This is all in direct correspondence with the magnum opus in Western alchemy. This opener is one of my favorite openers in any film that I've watched pretty much. Not only aesthetically being the style of the art and everything, but also philosophically. Because it is about a rebirth. Because what's happening here in this process is that consciousness is being placed into the shell. The shell is just a creation that we have made for our consciousness to be downloaded into. And this is showing us the beginning of manifestation for these beings. And it relates back to ourselves and how we come into existence. So esoterically, we can correlate all this back to our own human creation and our own birth, like I was stating before. But we can also look to some other films to kind of understand this concept. So this film actually inspired one of the most inspirational allegorical films of our time, known as The Matrix. So Wachowski's love for this film was so intense that when pitching The Matrix to Joel Silver, they allegedly showed him the final shoot from Ghost in the Shell and then added, "We want to do that for real." And I would have to say that Wachowski got pretty damn close to their goal, with not only several set pieces from the film capturing Ghost in the Shell's essence, but concepts like the jack in the back of people's necks, or the green digital code that's raining down in the title and in the end, in many scenes in The Matrix. And this is all from Oshii's film. The main protagonist of the film is Major Motoko Kusanagi, who is not an AI, but is the leader of a public security team working for the government section, or working for the government, which is known as Section 9, of Newport City. Newport is another way of saying a new path, or a new entrance, a new gate, a new world order, possibly. In the film, the protagonist is struggling with whether or not she has a ghost or soul. Since she is mostly cybernetic, she questions if she has a soul anymore, or if herself is actually even real. So this is what I mean by ontological questions. In the film, she is on a journey to understand the ontological and epistemological questions. As she states much later in the film, there are only countless ingredients that make up the human body and mind. Like all the components that make up me as an individual with my own personality. Sure, I have a face and a voice to distinguish myself from others, but my thoughts and memories are unique only to me, and I carry a sense of my own destiny. Each of those things are just a small part of it. I collect information and use it in my own way. All of that blends to create a mixture that forms me and gives rise to my conscience. I feel confined, only free to expand myself within bounds. So this connects back to spirit and matter, being that spirit is boundless and timeless. Matter being under the governing laws of the universe or natural laws, which are
Sorry, Steph,
boundary conditions.
hopefully this doesn't
that are
make
set
you
in
feel like you're
place.
back at school.
So she is pretty much saying that she only finds
Pretty dry
meaning
lecture, I know.
within the physical realm and within the realm of experience and existence. So this is the idea of spirit and matter as one, spirit in the flesh. What we're dealing with here is one of the oldest schisms known to man. It is the chronic left brain dominant of rigid skepticism, scientism, atheism, solipsism, moral relativism, social Darwinism, eugenics, and authoritarianism. The chronic right brain dominance, which is naivete, blind belief, religious extremism, solipsism as well, unworthiness, self-loathing, order following, and willing slave. But when you take this in, you pretty much just have atheism or scientism being the left brain idea, and the right brain idea being determinism, which is just religion. So, you have the idea that in the left polarized dialectic, the universe is a cosmic accident. There is no creator. There is no underlying intelligence in nature. There is no such thing as spiritual, moral, or natural law. The existence has no purpose other than to continue to exist. Hallmarks of scientism, atheism, and totalitarianism is what all this is. And then you have the right brain issues, which are God controls every event in creation, so all occurrences are preordained. Free will is an illusion and does not exist. Since God controls everything, change is impossible, so why even try? Action is ultimately meaningless, which is hallmarks of religious extremism and slave thing. Both of these are part of the worldview schism and are polarized dialectics. But in truth, you have a balance between the two. You have the deterministic component of reality, the natural laws, and then you have the spiritual component, or also you can look at it as the random component, which can be looked at as free will. And this all relates back to the epistemological understanding of our ontological selves. So what I mean by this is that it's about how we gain knowledge and who we truly are and what makes us up as beings, as conscious beings. So this goes back to an ancient philosophical argument which kind of dabbles in the question, how do objects survive change? But when we're dealing with ourselves, we are dealing with this kind of crisis of identity. So we're asking here, what is the criteria for telling that something is the same over time? So how do we know that we are the same being the same fundamental essence?
It's like when Star Trek uses transporters,
all
are
their
they
parts.
the same
So
person?
this has to relate to her because her entire body has been changed out with cybernetic parts. So how many parts being changed before she is not her original self is the idea here. Now, from a transcendental point of view, we can understand that we have a soul, which is the essence of what makes up the form. And this is how you would argue this seemingly paradoxical thing. which is the idea of the Theseus ship. You know, how can it be the same ship if everything has been changed on it? A lot of people would refer to this as dogma, but they just haven't understood the true spiritual science of the essence of creation, which is consciousness. And this is why you would approach this type of argument with a transcendental argument. She goes on to say later on, if we all reacted the same way, we'd be predictable. And there's always more than one way to view a situation. What's true for the group is also true for the individual. It's simple. Over-specialize and you breed in weakness. It's a slow death. I would have to disagree with her statement here that what is true for the group is true for the individual, because the truth does not belong to people. It is objective, immutable, and unwavering. There is no such thing as my truth. So I would actually say that what is true is always true, whether individual or group. Now, as far as the over-specializing idea that you breed in weakness, this kind of goes into the idea of communism. But ultimately, we can see her utilitarian approach to life in the last quote, and how she struggles with the nature of her reality. So, in this society, there looks to be a resource war for the basic means of survival, pre to the robotic and transhuman advancements, which has led to these attachments to these types of shells and technology that they have in this, you know, futuristic dystopia, is what I would call it. Now, if we relate this back to our modern world,
we're going to put on a little bit of music.
You know, there are these big
and
corporate entities and
we should be getting
think tanks such as, you know, the Royal Society, the UN, the Tavistock, the Institution of Human Relations, the Club of Rome, and they have exhausted tremendous amounts of wealth into selling phony propaganda in order to push such a world of transhumanism.
We've been given unbelievable access to cover some of the beautiful constructions here at Weather Workshop on Ghost in the Shell. And when I say unfettered access, I mean we've been able to get all the way inside of these props. Specifically, Norm's wife, Danica, has gotten inside the thermoptic suit. Now, when Major goes invisible in Ghost in the Shell, she gets into this thermoptic suit, and so has Danica. Holy cow!
Yeah.
Flo is the project lead on this. Is that correct?
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Can you talk to me about this costume?
As far as we're aware, no one before has done a full hero suit out of silicone like this.
Why silicone?
Silicone just has an amazing texture and finish and stretch that you just don't get from foam latex or from any fabric. It's really otherworldly and quite technologically advanced in appearance, and we could get these incredible details right into the costume. You know, we'd never have been able to do this with any other material.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
And it's multiple castings, because I see different colors. There's fabric there's co-molding, a huge amount of processes and problem solving.
Yeah, even different types of silicone. You can see here we have the softer silicone and a firmer silicone for the pauldrons around her shoulders.
Full marks to you, Danica, for being willing to get into this. Thank you very much. Did it take a team of people yanking and... Yes. It's beautiful how it moves. I'm seeing very little wrinkling. So you have magnets in some of this?
Yeah. You can see to hold Major's pauldrons down to the suit here. So the torso section and the arms and legs are separate. They're two separate pieces.
Okay.
So they're fastened with little
magnets.
magnetic fasteners, which allow the sleeve to rotate. You can move your arm around and it stays in place really beautifully.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's always a really hard part to get right on a costume. Yeah.
The shoulder.
Yeah. You just don't know what you're going to get out of a mold, and especially a giant one-piece mold like this torso section was. with one seam. There's a lot of room for it to go wrong.
It's a testament to the mold department.
We've got such an awesome team here, and they did an incredible job. As you can see, you know, every now and then we'd have minor imperfections, but they're so minor.
Yeah.
The biggest deal that we had with the silicon is that it takes on an imprint really easily. So if you were to lay it down on a table on top of something, it would sort of create dents.
Like when you get sleep marks on your face?
Exactly, yeah. And they can be really hard to get out. So we had to store the torso section on that shaped core.
Sure.
To keep it perfect, yeah.
How many people from start to finish had a hand working on these
So many.
suits?
It's a massive team effort, yeah. Like no one department is responsible for this, yeah.
Dozens of people?
So many people, yeah. It's just awesome. For the torso section, that was marked out on a polystyrene life-size mannequin that we made from a 3D scan of Scarlett.
Oh, wow.
And so we marked that out, blocked out all the lines, all the shapes, and then I've been making stretch garments for a really long time, so we kind of applied the stretch pattern making process to the mannequin to reduce it.
Oh, right, because you want it to fit tightly, which means the suit has to be smaller than the actor.
Yeah, so we had to reduce the buck, the core of the suit, to the size that a bathing suit would be. And we were really lucky that it worked. And from there we took that reduced buck, that reduced core, to the 3D department. They scanned it and then transferred all the design lines that you can see onto that. Milled out in plasticine, a really firm plasticine, and then finished by hand, then molded, then cast. Yeah, it was a process.
How many of these were you required to make?
We made 4 hero and 4 stunt suits. So 4 suits for Scarlett and 4 for her stunt double.
And so, am I correct in that her stunt double had to also be scanned? Was there a separate process, or was she close enough?
She was reasonably close.
Okay.
We just made a few nips and tucks to fit them to either one, yeah.
And then to get her in, is it a lot of talcum powder?
Oh, there's so much talc. So much talc that I leave a trail of it everywhere I go.
The torso piece is much easier to get into.
Really?
Yeah, so this is separate.
Oh, it's like a bathing suit almost?
Yeah.
So that piece was much easier.
It's just like straight in over the head. Yeah.
Oh, really? So there's no zipper up the back?
So there's no zip. That was a really big thing that we had to decide was, you can see, this is the one seam on the costume, the only seam.
That's incredible.
Yeah, but we didn't want to have to put any fastenings in because it would ruin the finish of the suit.
Above and beyond the Call of Duty, punch in.
Much respect to Scarlett Johansson for doing this.
Really?
For whatever the duration of the shoot, because I mean it's a process.
Can you imagine doing this every day for a few weeks and then wearing it under hot lights while a whole crew holds booms and lights and stuff? And that's
no,
no,
not at all, not even a little bit. So, great job, Scarlett.
Oh yeah, great job, Scarlett.
Hey guys, Weta built the king's ransom of amazing and beautiful objects and technology for Ghost in the Shell. We are about to go look at one of the most beautiful pieces I have seen. It is in the 3D modeling room, and it is an endoskeleton that is the inside of the Major. That's why I'm standing in front of a cabinet full of skeletons. It is one of the loveliest props I have ever seen up close, and we're going to find out how they built it. Holy moly, Jared. I'm speechless. I don't think I've ever seen anything quite this beautiful before. It also looks like, when I actually start to parse how many parts there are, an absolute nightmare. I mean, what am I looking at here?
So what you're looking at is a collection of basically 3D printed objects. Our clear resin, our black resin, there are laser cut components, model made components, 3D printed steel joints to keep the strength, and we've got 3D printed nylon for some of the limbs as well to hold their shape.
Jared, I know that this stuff doesn't happen as just a one-off, let's print it out of this and let's just go. How much experimentation is there into different 3D printing processes to choose the right black, the right plastic, the right metal, the right clear?
So regarding that, most projects that we do here, we will usually run through a paint finish. But for something like this, we went through about a month of testing the different materials to try and make sure that we're going to get something that had the look we were going for.
Yeah.
The director would come in and approve different samples and would have different finishes on them for him to pick and choose from. And then we also did some of our own internal film tests to see what it would look like on camera as well, once we had some parts that really looked like they were coming together.
Is there, I'm sure for some of them they're like, I'm not sure this is going to work, and then you see it and you're like, it totally works. Was there some successes like that?
Yeah, there were definitely a couple of moments. When we first saw the clear coat on the muscles, we definitely had a eureka moment.
I'll bet. How many separate parts are in this exoskeleton?
We don't have a definite number, but there's between 300 and 400 components.
3D printing is relatively still a new technology. It takes a while to 3D print stuff, and these are some very elaborate pieces. How much time did it take to print all these?
This was hundreds of hours of printing, just given how long it takes to print something that's got this resolution of detail and the number of components in it as well.
Did you make just one for the film, or was there more than one?
This is a one-off.
This is a one-off. Is this the final product, or is there any more to it that we're not seeing right now?
So this actually fits inside a ballistic gel layer that was also 3D printed. That's effectively the silhouette of the actress that the character is supposed to be.
That goes all the way over?
Yeah, that will be in show as well.
Has that not been printed yet, or is that?
Oh no, that's been printed and filmed as well, but it was quite a challenge to get that all to fit on and stay together, and it doesn't travel as well as the rest of it, so that's in a box somewhere else.
I didn't even know one could print in clear resin like this with that type of clarity.
We didn't either until we did this project. So previously we had printed in a clear resin, but it was much foggier than what you see now. So our props department built a light box that has an absence of UV light that then basically overcures this material. And then after that, we gave it to our paint department and they gave it a layer of clear coat, which gives you the result you see here.
That gives it that extra pop.
Yeah.
Did you guys design this? Did you work from an existing design from production?
From an existing design, but that was purely digital. And so then our job is to take that and turn that into something that can be manufactured.
Oh my God. So in terms of assembling, you almost have to assemble it twice. There's assembling it digitally, then there's printing it, and then there's assembling all these parts together. You go and you print stuff and it should all fit together at the end, but it doesn't all quite, so there's improvisation.
So there was a bit of back and forth with that, but for the most part, this build went relatively straightforward regarding printed components fitting together because of the accuracy of the printer.
Yeah. How large is the team that put this together?
For physically putting together, they actually tried to leave it mainly to one guy, who just basically made it his baby, and then had people helping him on and off as he went as well.
God, these screws are so tiny. These are like M3s, M4s?
M2s.
M2s. It's, I'm asking lots of questions, but I'm kind of speechless. I've rarely seen anything this lovely before. Did you guys kind of fall in love with the construction, or are you like so sick of it you're happy to see it be done?
Mixed feelings, definitely. But yeah, it was awesome to see it come together for sure.
What is the place in which it appears in the film?
Narratively, it's the major character being constructed. So there aren't actually any shots of this particular skeleton of muscles going onto bones, but so you see the eye mask zooms onto the face, and it's the physical construction of the AI body.
Yeah, it's really great that the production decided to do this practically.
Yeah.
Obviously, this is exactly the kind of thing one could do in CG, but the fact that they made it practically, that has a veracity to it on film, I know that you can't match.
Yeah, that makes it a very exciting project for us because we're the physical side of things, versus this project could have just gone to a digital firm who would have chucked it all together from that initial file. But for us to get a project this challenging where we get to create something as complicated as this is pretty exciting.
Well, it also raises the stakes because you want it to be incredibly beautiful.
Digital,
yeah, that's intense. I would say that you met the challenge admirably. Oh my gosh, these thick parts are incredible. I so want to actually move it and articulate it, even though I know that it doesn't articulate like.
Yeah, there's a small degree of articulation in the arm joints. In particular, they just wanted some kind of subtle movement to give it a little bit of life, but not so much movement that it was going to take that much longer to put together.
It doesn't matter how close you get to this. The beauty of the fine detail is extant at every scale. Incredible. Thank you so much for letting us have access to this. It's a gorgeous piece. Your team is to be commended. It's a masterpiece.
Some music, guys. We're going to do some music. And while I finish the rest of this piece, and then we'll just start at the giveaway. Do enjoy Ghost in the Shell. live. Yeah, it should have some shiny bits, reflective bits. Like the tree and trying to pick some highlights on the edge here. I feel like it's got these pieces, right? It's got ridges and edges. You can download these tunes on my Patreon. I did make a mix of this. And I did put the MP3 up there as well. Might recognize this song. Good enough to be on a comic book cover, I hope.
Pleasures remain, so does the pain. Words are meaningless. Oh, my little girl. All I ever needed is here in my arms. Words are very unnecessary. They can only do. All I ever wanted, all I ever needed is here.
This song was basically remixed done for the live action Ghost in the Shell. This is Testament. I actually really like this version, to be honest.
All I ever wanted, all I ever needed is here in my arms. In my arms.
Whoa! Thank you for that gifted sub. Oh, happy Thanksgiving to you. Misty, they get you an extra entry. Who ended up picking it up? Oh, Emma! Alright. Thank you for helping out. Appreciate that. That's loud. Awesome. Okay. Got some lights going on in the bed. Homage to Ghost in the Shell. I know I normally do portraits. I figured for this one I had this idea in my head that I wanted her in a bed in a fetal position, kind of, I don't know. It's always scary because I don't know if I'm going to get it done in time. I mean, I set the time, right? But I generally keep my streams a certain orange light and fall. Little contrast green. I know maybe you guys are going to see green on your screens, but yeah, she's tinted green, guys. I gotta get a better camera. So that was a baby. Are we drawing a baby? Baby robot. Baby cyborg. Deliveries. Oh, sorry about that. I'm not talking into the mic. Yeah, I do have the music pretty loud too. Yeah, I imagine the music is pretty damn loud, right? I'm pretty satisfied with it though. Did I move everything? Oh, did I move? I did, didn't I? Oh man. My main thing is I want to make this seem like there's lights coming from the bed. But there's a glow here. But the lights are hidden by these kind of cushion thingies. Kind of frames the figure nicely, which is nice. Cool. All right. Damn. All right, I'll turn the music down a tiny tad. Woo! I want to thank you guys. I know Thanksgiving's coming up for the U.S. and stuff like that. I want to say a big thank you to everybody. One way I thank my community is I give away pieces of art. So, like today, we are giving out Ghost in the Shell. All right, so what we need to do is I need to get you guys to put something in chat. If you're here watching live and you're active, you always get a free entry. So, I'm gonna do. You know what? The word we're gonna use is human. Put word human in chat. Now we got to roll some dice. Since this is the third week, we're going to roll 3 20-sided dice. Sound good? Let's go. Oh my God. I rolled a 20 and a 12 and a 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35 shuffles. An epic amount of shuffles, guys. So the whole point of this is basically to find out if you guys have been ghost hacked. Let's go. Let's get a giveaway going, shall we? Let's get it going. Good luck, everyone. Oh, Emma got hit right off the bat. Your vulnerability analysis. You have been ghost hacked. Oh no, Emma, you're not out that. You're not out that because you got a sub gifted from Mystic. Always remember, Emma, that things that were hard to bear are always sweet to remember. Oh, we got a Bobby24. He's been hacked. His memories are false. Me, I'm hopelessly in love with a memory. It's like an echo of another time or another place. Oh, we got the new blood, Cammy 101. You're not out yet, but I'm sorry to say that it seems you've been hacked. All memories are trivia, aren't they? Oh, we got the gift door. Mystic Angel Christina. Not to worry, you're not out yet. Memories are kind of like bullets, aren't they? Some will whiz by you and only kind of spook you. Others will tear you open and leave you in pieces. We got transparency. Speaking of ghosts and Ghosts in the Shell. That's kind of on point. Transparency from DLive. I'm sorry to say your memory's been hacked. Your memory is a monster. It summons with it a kind of a will of its own. You think you have a memory, but it actually has you. We got Elizabeth! Elizabeth! You have memories implanted in you. You can't trust your memory. So when you think of an idea, Elizabeth, you write it down, right? We got Yummy the Vappy. Oh, Yummy. No one can ever take your memories from you. Each day is a new beginning. Make good memories every day. But I have to remove you. All right, what else? We've got MD Wit from MD Wit. Aw. Oh, man. No one can ever take your memories from you. Each day is a new beginning. Make memories. Just make memories every day. Oh, Mystic Angel with the gifted sub. Mystic, my goodness. Yourself is created by your memories, and your memories are created by your mental habits. We got a Ninja Mari. Ninja Mari. There are memories that time does not erase. Forever does not make loss forgettable, only bearable. Oh, we've got, looks like it is Danielle. Danielle, you never know when you're going to making a memory, right? Oh my gosh, we got a double whammy from Danielle. Danielle, my goodness. Memories and thoughts age just as people do, but certain thoughts can never age, and certain memories can never fade. It is landing on GamerCam! Woo! Memories and thoughts age, dude, just as people do. But certain thoughts can never age, and certain memories can never fade. Elizabeth! Oh man, Elizabeth, the worst memories stick with us, while the nice ones always seem to slip through our fingers. Oh, almost hit Pablo, but ended up on Elizabeth. Elizabeth. Oh man. Memories are not fixed or frozen, but they're kind of transformed, disassembled, reassembled, recategorized, and with every act of recollection. It's like we're always sorting our memories, right? I mean, how often do you think on things? Oh, we got GM Dixie. Do you use your memories, or do you allow your memories to use you? We got Homer Pimpin'. Obviously a play on Homer Simpson. One must have a good memory to be able to keep the promise one makes. Right, Homer? Who we got? Oh my gosh, we got Elizabeth again. Music as at its essence is what gives us memories. And the longer the song has existed in our lives, the more the memories we have of it. Oh, Emma. Oh man, without memory, there is no culture. Without memory, there would be no civilization, no society, or no future. Oh gosh, Elizabeth, you got a triple there. Holy crap. Oh my gosh. Elizabeth, memory is an autumn leaf that murmurs a while in the wind and then is heard no more. Oh, is it the first one from Stephanie Thompson? This is a change, Stephanie. Usually get hit right off the bat. Oh my gosh. Our memory is a more perfect world than the universe. It gives back life to those who no longer exist. Memory is power. Oh, Mystic! Mystic, life is like a garden. Perfect moments can be had, but not preserved, except in memory. Woo! Oh, Cammy! Ah. Cammy, unfortunate. The one thing you need to leave behind, though, Cammy, is you need to leave behind good memories. I appreciate you coming into the channel for sure. Hope you'll be back. We got Renzo Scriber. Memories warm you up from the inside, but they also tear you apart. We got Hendrik Eber. There are lots of people who mistake their imagination for their memory. Oh, code word Havoc. Oh, code word. Code word, we didn't even realize we were making memories. We just knew we were having fun, right? Oh my gosh, Ace Hardcore right after code word. Holy crap. That's what the world is, after all, right? An endless battle of contrasting memories. Orcandic. You can close your eyes to reality, but not to memories. Oh, we got Mystic. Nothing fixes a thing so intensely as the memory that you wish to forget. I'm sorry, Mystic. Oh, we got Maybe Q Chris in the house. All right. Maybe Q Chris. Memory is never a precise duplicate of the original. It's a continuing act of creation. Looks like it's going to be landing on GM Dixie. All right. The biggest lie of a human memory is that it feels true. Interesting. Oh, looks like we got Monster J! Monster J! A mind is not alive when it's burdened with centuries of memory. Memories are the currency of our lifespans. Oh, wow. Stephanie Thompson. All right. Memory is a complicated thing relative to truth, but not its twin. Comtech. A good memory is one trained to forget the trivial. It's a good exercise. Forget things that don't matter. We got Linz and John Paranormal. A deja vu moment. Oh, is it a glitch in the Matrix? Oh no. All right. Memory is the sense of loss, and loss pulls us after it. All right. A little advice to Pablo Escanaba. Focus on the good memories. Discard the not so good. Do not dwell on them for a moment. Be too busy in making new memories. We got Elizabeth in the house. Elizabeth, human memory is a marvelous but fallacious instrument. Excuse me. The memories which lie within us are not carved in stone. Not that they tend to become erased as years go by, but often they change and even increase extraneous features. We got, whoa, looks like Comtech. You know, Comtech, sometimes it only takes one song to bring back 1,000 memories. Yeah, that was my flub. My memory's bad. Don't be like me. Mischievous Matt. You cannot hold me in your arms, then hold my memory in high regard. And if I cannot be in your life, then at least let me live in your heart. Oh, it's Eric Walker. Eric, memory breeds in me strange loneliness. Oh, we got Elizabeth here. Okay, Elizabeth. Another word of advice here is that the memory eliminates the bad and magnifies the good. All right, here we go. The wheel is getting thinner. Oh, it looks like Comtech is being eliminated. All right, Comtech, the best things in life are the people you love, and the places you've seen, and the memories you've made along the way. Oh, it's gonna land on pieces. Oh, pieces. Without memory, there is no healing. Without forgiveness, there is no future. From pieces to peach ass. Okay. All right, peach ass. Memory is the treasure house of the mind, wherein the moments thereof are kept and preserved. Whoa, we gotta level up? Who leveled up? MD Wit! Much love, MD. Really appreciate that. We got Suki. Oh, Suki. If you tell the truth, you don't have to ever remember anything. Oh, it looks like Elizabeth here. All right. There is no greater sorrow than to recall in misery the time when we were happy. All right. I don't like that one. Let's do humans, not places, make memories. There, that's a better one. Oh, GM Dixie. Oh, GM Dixie. We've all forgotten more than we can remember. Oh, MD. MD. Life brings so much, yet it takes it away so suddenly. And at the time of death, we are left with all we're left is with a shared friendship and memories. Oh, Danielle! Danielle! There are memories you're better off without, and things that are better lost forever. Whoa, we got Benny Rowley. Few have wished for a memory so much that they have longed for forgetfulness. Oh, MD. MD. I gotta say, the true art of memory is the art of attention. So always pay attention. And therefore you'll always have memories. Stephanie. A memory is what is left when something happens and does not completely unhappen. A memory will preserve it forever. How are we doing here? We got 9. 9 left on the wheel here. Oh my gosh, Stephanie again. A picture's worth 1,000 words, but the memories are priceless. Oh, that is Elizabeth. I might be the last one for Elizabeth there. Memory is the only paradise from which we cannot be driven. How are we doing? 7 names left on the wheel here. I'm gonna whittle it down to 5. Ooh, Stephanie. A healthy relationship requires you to let go of bitter memories of the past and move on to a new hope. She's like, I like Star Trek, not Star Wars. MD Wit. Oh, MD Wit. Memory is the treasure and guardian of all things. All right, we've got 5 names left on the wheel here, guys. We've got Stephanie with 2 chances, Pablo with a chance, Hello Hellop with a chance, and MD Wit with a chance. Best of luck, everybody. I knew you'd be disappointed by the Star Wars. Oh, Stephanie. Oh, wow. She's making it a fair fight, guys. A fair fight. Oof. Take care of all your memories, for you cannot relive them. Well, you can, just in your head. All right. Final 4. MD Wit, Hello Hellop, Pablo Escanaba, and Stephanie. Oh, Stephanie got eliminated right at the end here. The most beautiful things are not associated with money. They are memories and moments. If you don't celebrate those, they can just pass you by. Oh. It's now a 3-way between MD Wit, Hello Hellop, and Pablo Escanaba. Oh, Pablo, unlucky. When I think of the past, it's a beautiful thing we pick out. We want to believe it was all just like that. Pablo, I'm sorry, but your life is false. Your memories are false. You've been hacked. You're gone. Now we've got a standoff between MD Wit and Hello Hellop. Oh my gosh. All right, we spin it. Let's find out. I appreciate you guys big time. Thank you guys for being here. MD Wit. Holy shit, we got a new winner today. MD Wit. Much love, MD. Sometimes you will never know the value of a moment until it becomes a memory. We have our winner, guys. Hello Hellop. Congratulations. I will let you know what you won. And yeah, perfect. Woo! This was the 221st giveaway I've done on the channel here. Holy crap. Man. And I'll plug this right now, guys. On Monday, it'll be my 3-year anniversary on DLive. So I'm going to do an exclusive stream on Monday. Stay tuned to my Twitter or stay tuned to Discord. I'll let you guys know the times and stuff like that. We're going to hang out, have some fun, do some unusual stuff we don't do on the channel. We're going to do some, speaking of memories, we're going to go through some memories of what's happened over these past 3 years. So I hope you'll be able to join me for that. I also do have some mail to open live on stream from you lovely guys. So I appreciate it. I can't can't stress that out. And then I am going to be streaming tomorrow with GamerCam. We're going to be finishing off our Dark Pictures Anthology gameplay. It's going to be a lot of fun. Right on. I appreciate you guys big time. Thank you guys for hanging out with me. Thank you guys for jumping into this deep dive with Ghost in the Shell. I know it was a bit nerdy today. Anyway, I hope you had a good time. I appreciate you all. I'm going to leave you guys with a little something, as you know I always do.